I want to welcome back to episode 102 of the Salvaggio and Cratty Sports Podcast. Here for you on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. Today, we're doing it a little earlier due to me being on vacation, Ryan being off work today, so we can make that work. Tons to talk about this week. Celtics making moves, a lot going on in the NBA. We got the NHL draft and offseason stuff going on in the NHL. Jim Montgomery hired by the Bruins. More to talk about that and some comments from Neely and Sweeney today. Brian Bayo is making his debut in the MLB for the Red Sox tonight, so that's exciting at 23 years old. Can't think of a more exciting prospect coming out of, as a pitcher, maybe Tanner Houck. We do have some NFL news that dropped just recently that we'll touch on in moments of the week. But before we get there, Ryan, how are we?
I'm doing well. How are you? On vacation mode? Are you in full swing vacation mode? Or are you still trying to, get yourself ready for the draft tomorrow? Obviously the show today. Or are you just full blown, on vacation, ready to go? Let's hammer this thing out and party. Okay.
Both. Anybody who knows me, draft time is my favorite time of the year. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have free agency starting the 13th with the revised offseason schedule this year. But moments of the week, my favorite thing I've seen in the past week is the Danilo Gallinari song going around on Twitter. I don't know if anybody's seen this, but it's this awesome song about Danilo Gallinari, and it's just these guys singing Danilo Gallinari. And it's like over and over again. There's highlights with it. It's magnificent. Mm-hmm. I think it's my new favorite video, out there.
It's in Italian, so you can't understand. I think it's Italian, so can't understand a word of it other than Danilo Gallinari. But
it's awesome. It's so awesome. It's a tier 5 for me. Maybe the best video to ever be created. Mm-hmm. And this isn't really a moment of the week, just touching on it since we don't have a big football segment, but is still a big moment. The Cleveland Browns just traded Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional 2024 5th-round pick. Further crowding the QB room there with Darnold, Corral, I think they still have PJ Walker, and Davis Cheek, I think is the other one. So, yeah.
Unfortunate last name.
Pretty weird how Davis Cheek is just going to steal a job from Baker Mayfield, but I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Happens. It's weird. It's a weird trade. I don't really think. Sure, he's an upgrade over Sam Darnold, but I don't know. It just doesn't
You don't know how much.
There's
yeah.
a whole lot of pop to this move. Baker Mayfield, I think this is the last year probably for him. If he sucks this year, I don't think he's ever going to become a consistent. He's 15 to 20 range best QB in the league.
Yeah, he's a career backup at that point. I feel like
this is it. I think there is potential that Baker Mayfield could be a pretty solid QB and regain some form that we've seen in the past at times from him. But overall, I'm not super pumped about this move if I'm a Panthers fan. But it's not bad. I mean, you gave up a 2024 conditional 5th too, so it's not like you had to give up a 3rd-round pick or something of a little more value. But I don't know. We'll see. I think it's got some upside. It's somewhat worth the gamble, but like I said, I wouldn't be super excited about it and jumping for joy if I'm a Panthers fan. Unless you were to hate Sam Darnold, then anything is
exactly
better. So
yeah, I was gonna say anything's an upgrade over Sam Darnold. We've crapped on him, or I've crapped on him enough as is. But I'm with you. It's a strange trade. It doesn't. If you're a Panthers fan, like you said, I don't know if it moves the needle for you. I don't know if the Panthers are expected to do a whole lot to begin with this season, but Baker Mayfield, I guess, makes them a little better than they would be with Darnold under the helm. The interesting thing for me is we were talking right before we jumped on here. Is the whole Cleveland spin of it, because obviously the stuff with Deshaun Watson is still ongoing. They don't know if he's even going to play this season, if he'll be suspended or not. You had to inform me that Jacoby Brissett is their backup, because I was curious on what direction they'd go in now without Mayfield. But I think it was kind of a writing on the wall thing. I think everybody knew Mayfield probably wasn't going to, mend any bridges with Cleveland. I don't think they were going to either. With the way that situation panned out. And then it's a move that just had to be made. And like you said, if you can get anything for him without having to, tinker with that contract or do anything else or add any other pieces to make Mayfield a little bit more enticing, then I think it's a deal that works out for both teams.
Yeah. You forgot to tweet it out.
The thing didn't come up on my Twitter feed. I was going to ask if you had seen it because there's nothing that has come up to, there it is now, 5 minutes ago. It was not there. when I last looked at it. I'm sorry. I got it now.
End the show.
I know it's all over. Go back to your vacation. I'm going to wait for Brian Bayo to make his appearance tonight, and then we'll come back next Wednesday and reconvene. So
yeah, exactly.
There, it's out there now.
All right, awesome. I'll take a look at that in a second. Joey Chestnut, maybe the greatest.
Oh, right. Yeah, we're on to
on to the next one. Joey Chestnut underachieves with 63. I saw the line was 74.5. But, I mean, he's a hero. He's a hero.
For more ways than one. I mean, he is right up there with the Michael Jordans, the Tiger Woodses, the Tom Brady's of the world when it just comes to utter dominance in his
flu game.
He did have his flu game, too. Showed up with crutches. I can't remember what it was. It was a torn or a tendon injury was what I saw. But that wasn't really, I mean, it was part of the big story, but I think one of the bigger ones is we had another case where some idiot protester was able to just storm up right on stage. We obviously talked a lot about that in the NBA playoffs with people just being able to storm onto the court. It happened here, and Joey Chestnut, like you said, the beast that he is, while eating a hot dog, while on one leg, put the protester in a chokehold, didn't knock him out or anything, but just kind of disperse him away pretty quickly. The update on it, this was from Direct Action Everywhere. I saw on Twitter yesterday, said, quote, arrested, activists disrupted, hashtag Nathan's hot dog eating contest have been taken into police custody. Their protest was against Nathan's pork supplier, Smithfield Foods, a company exposed for animal cruelty, worker abuse, and pollution. The sign, which I don't know if you have any sort of insight or could give me any, or maybe your thoughts. The sign that the protester was holding, he was dressed as Darth Vader, first of all. And then the sign said, expose Smithfield's Death Star, because apparently Smithfield has a Death Star that nobody knows about. Like, if this is something that's going on, I feel like we should be worried. And maybe if there's a looming Death Star somewhere, then maybe Joey Chestnut shouldn't be looked at as a hero. Like maybe some people are. Maybe we should be taking this more seriously. But I didn't get it. Like, again, it's just another, again, like animal cruelty is not great. Worker abuse is not great either. But like, do you really have to run up during the Nathan's hot dog eating contest to kind of protest that? Like, there's a time and a place for these things, and that doesn't really seem like the thing to be. But like, just again, Joey Chestnut's reaction to it, I think he was asked about it, why I put him in a headlock, and he basically said, because I don't want to drop the hot dog. Like, yeah, boss move there, MVP.
It's kind of a similar situation to when that protester went on and the security guard was like born ready for it. Like, Joey Chestnut was born ready for it. He's like, you're not fucking with me.
Wasn't phased by it. Just,
like, I'm in the middle of my flu game here, Michael Jordan level. Like, you're not fucking with me. I'm taking you down swiftly and with power and force. He's an athlete.
Didn't break stride, kept eating, just chowing down on hot dogs. Like, the guy wasn't even there. Like you said, just an absolute GOAT move by a guy that is, again, you consider it a sport, maybe, then the best of his sport, or again, however you want to look at it.
It's the hot dog eating competition equivalent to catching a baseball coming at you with a beer or like a baby in your hand.
Okay. Like, I think that's a good comparison. But yeah, I mean, just like you said, the guy's an animal, wins his record-setting 15th win on the 4th of July, 7th straight. You said it, 63 hot dogs was not obviously comparable to what was it, 74 you said he had last year.
He's like, the line was 74.5.
Okay. But you're still ridiculous. And then again, just on one leg to take this guy out like he wasn't even there, or just like it was nothing, and then just continue to go back to just mowing down hot dogs. Just ridiculous feat all around.
Crazy.
So tier 5 for me as well.
Absolutely. I was talking with some family about this. Like, I don't know how you can eat that many hot dogs and not just straight up die.
I don't either.
Doing it for 15 years.
Yeah, 15 straight.
Training sessions like in between, like in the off season. Well, his off season is 364 days a year, but
that's my thing though. Is how do you you can train obviously for like the NHL season, baseball, but like you can train for multiples. I've never understood how you train for an eating You just like stuff your face constantly. Like,
it's just all messy and like
a
lot of digestion issues and time on the toilet. Like,
you don't want to get into that stuff, but
it's just,
that's what I mean. It's like, I don't know how you would prepare yourself for that.
It's bonkers. It really is. But
do you go the opposite way and like not eat for a week straight? So then like you're starving getting there. Like it's baffling to me.
Effed up too.
Yep, exactly.
Joey Chestnut, my GOAT. That's my GOAT. So
tip of the cap to one of the all-time greats.
Credit to Badlands Chugs too, with the pink lemonade chug.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that. I didn't know that was a thing until I saw that on Twitter. I think the third they were talking about him and it was the same thing. The lemonade chugging. That guy's a beast too. He's like
his videos on YouTube are so funny because he'll like be preparing for someone and he'll let out like the funniest deep breath you'll ever hear in your life. You're like,
oh, he is a giant human being. So
it's funny. It sounds like something like an evil villain would do, like something like Darth Vader would do. Oh my God, just what a scene. It's always a treat every year, but I don't know. I'm not really down with protesters at one of the greatest events of the year. One of the highlights of the 4th of July every year. But it happened. So
I think it was the first time I did it in a couple of years, right? Because obviously COVID was kind of another thing COVID messed up. I thought I saw that on Twitter somewhere that it was they're all happy to have it back.
And right.
So, but
I remember watching one in recent years, but it was probably 2019 or 2020. I don't remember last year. I'm just thinking about it, but I don't know. We don't have all the information in front of us.
No,
if you can't tell. So, but we must segue into Celtics talk because not only are the Celtics making big moves, the NBA's there's a lot going on.
There is, I think, we'll get into it a little later if we're going to really dive into the whole Brooklyn and Kyrie and Kevin Durant discussion. But I think everything's kind of, it seems like, or for the most part, is on pause right now or kind of wait and see mode, depending on how the Brooklyn Nets decide to go about their team. And if Kyrie Irving gets traded, if Kevin Durant truly wants out, because now there's the reports out there that both of them might stay for the year. So who the hell knows what's going on in Brooklyn? It's a mess out there. I have no, love loss for them because that's the bed you made, signing Kyrie Irving to go along with Kevin Durant and still putting up with them. But yes, the Celtics are making moves. Brad Stevens, again, we thought last year he had a very good offseason, of course, acquiring Al Horford, and that move working out very well. This year, he's already topped that within maybe a 24-hour span of these two moves, obviously signing or reportedly signing. I don't think they've put pen to paper yet. Danilo Gallinari, who we talked about before we jumped on, you and I. And then, again, like an hour or two later, they trade for Malcolm Brogdon. We'll start with the Gallinari stuff because that's what came out first. Like I said, reportedly in the mix to sign a 2-year mid-level exception of $6.5 million. That was from Mass Live's Brian Robb. Danilo Gallinari, of course, was a guy a lot of Celtics fans wanted. Career 15.6 points per game last season, played in 66 games with Atlanta, averages 11.7 points per game, but he shot 43.4 from the field, 38.1 from deep. Good rebounder, very good passer. I think that's one of the underrated things about him. There is one knock on him. He's not the best defender. Chris Forsberg had a good article that kind of laid out the positives of Gallinari and the negatives. One of the big negatives with him is he's pretty much, he said, quote, no more than an average defender and is probably Boston's worst defender on the team, which is obviously saying a lot because the Celtics have it's not that hard to be the worst defender when you have a bunch of great defenders like they do. Gallinari is also on the older age, 34. He will be next month. So there's always a talk of, ability slipping. But like I said, there's plenty of positives. He shot 40.8% from three since 2019. 6'10". He's not easy to shoot over. Gives the Celtics much better size and, of course, shooting ability than they had on the bench last season. He shot 45% from corner three last season. He only had 40 attempts. 37% on non-corner threes is down from 42.3% the last 3 seasons. And then with Gallinari on the full last season, Atlanta's offensive rating was a crazy 118.4. And then the big thing too with Gallinari, of course, the big thing with the Celtics last year was the turnovers. Chris Forsberg also had the Gallinari is a guy that protects the ball. Just 0.6 turnovers last season, 1.2 for his career, and shoots free throws very well as well. He was over 90% last year and is over 87% in his career. So a lot to like with Gallinari. Again, the negatives, kind of nitpicking, not a great defender. But you got to think he's going to be out there with guys like Tatum and Smart and Brown for the most part. So they're going to be able to cover him up a little bit. But again, a move that I think a lot of people are in agreement. This is something they needed. This was the guy that a lot of people had linked to the Celtics going after, and good that they obviously get him. Of course, he had to be waived. San Antonio, he was traded to, was it San Antonio? Correct me if I'm wrong. He was traded somewhere and I can't remember now off the top of my head.
Oh, he was in the Devon. Yeah, it was San Antonio.
Yeah, he was in the Murray trade. Correct. I couldn't draw a blank on who he was traded for.
Like 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, yep. But yeah, that's what everybody said. As soon as he was traded out there and got waived, everyone's like, all right, this is a guy the Celtics have to get. They did, and they get a guy with some size and obviously a very good shooting ability off the bench. I know I threw a lot at you there, kind of rambling. Your thoughts on the Gallinari move?
I like that the reported 2-year term is the ideal term,
Mm-hmm.
I think. For a 33-year-old guy, I don't think you really want to risk giving him like 3-4 years.
Nope.
So 2 years is pretty nice. I don't even know what a mid-level exception is.
I don't know.
It just sounds made up. Like, I think the NBA just makes things up.
Their contracts and free. It's ridiculous how much kind of just random things they come up with. It seems like every year.
Yeah, it's strange, but yeah, everything outside of the defending, I hear about the player is pretty good. He's got a cool song, which we discussed.
Yep.
That's huge for morale. Maybe they'll play it in the locker room.
I was just gonna say maybe that'll be on the jumbotron 1 or 2 games. Once if he gets hot, just start playing that and during the timeouts.
If they win a championship, they'll play that in the locker room, the celebration, like the parade.
Play it on his duck boat as he rolls by. Yep.
Everybody will be dancing, having a great time, enjoying the good vibes. I like the move. I don't really see like a huge reason to hate it. So that's where I'm at. And, his play will speak for itself, however he ends up playing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like we clued at, and for anybody who somehow doesn't know, that isn't the only big move that the Celtics have made in the past week.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it going into the offseason, what they needed. They needed a bench shooter and scorer. There were some people that thought they needed a quote-unquote true point guard. Very funny, too, that this trade came out after Marcus Smart had the comments that, like, they didn't really need a point. He's their point guard. I saw some people kind of talk about that. The timing was funny. But we'll see how it works out. The Celtics, of course, they acquired Malcolm Brogdon from the Indiana Pacers in a deal that was just on paper. I don't know how you can look at this if you're a Pacers fan and be happy with what you got. The Celtics, all they had to give up for one of the better young point guards in the league last couple of seasons, a guy that's pretty versatile, and a former rookie of the year as well. The Pacers got Daniel Tice, Aaron Nesmith, Nick Stauskas, Malik Fitz, Juwan Morgan, and the 2023 first-round pick from the Celtics. With that pick, this is from Brian Robb as well. There is some conditions to it. He said, quote, league sources tell Mass Live that the 2023 first-round pick the Celtics are trading in the Malcolm Brogdon deal is top 12 protected. If that doesn't convey this year, the Pacers get a second-round pick instead. So basically what that means, it is a complete long shot. If the Celtics were to just absolutely stink this season for some reason, maybe they have a massive injury or guys don't work out, and they finish within the top 12, they get that pick back, and Indiana gets a second-round pick instead. So, again, an incredibly smart move by Brad Stevens. The big thing, too,
the NBA is like
it's ridiculous.
Stuff up, like
exactly. It's something new, like I said, every offseason.
I guess it makes sense. Like there's certain conditions that are a little wonky in the NHL too.
Not as close to basketball. Basketball, it's like leaps and bounds above everything.
Sometimes there are some really strange ones, but yeah, basketball just, at least in a different like sense, or have their own level of weirdness to them. So,
but this is another move.
Like, this move is just awesome. Like they really did not give up any like crucial pieces. Daniel
not
Tyson,
really
out of favor. Brought back as a morale guy in depth and just didn't really do a whole lot. Aaron Nesmith has some potential, but there's still some question marks around him. Didn't really establish himself much this year. Stauskas Fitz apparently a great morale guy too.
Yep. I was just gonna say,
depth guys. So,
Fitz is the guy that was doing all the crazy celebrations whenever you had a 3-hit or a dunk or something. Like that's what he brought to the table, and that's pretty much it. Not a knock on him, but like that's the type of player, the type of personality he was for the bench. Like,
and a 2023 first, like, who cares? The Celtics
that's nothing. Exactly.
Like, I could not care less about trading a first round pick. Like,
no, and that's why we've talked about this plenty of times with Brad Stevens so far. We did it with the Derek White trade. He's not afraid to get rid of picks that like the Celtics probably aren't going to need or have to use. Like they're the betting favorites again right now to be in the NBA Finals. So if they make it to the finals or win it, or even make a deep playoff run, that 2023 first round pick is going to be a late round pick. Like those don't really ever tend to, pan out for the most part. So again, I'm with you. Like the pick, it means nothing to me. I haven't seen anybody say that, like, oh, you had to give up a pick too or anything. Like, because again, that would be crazy. Brogdon, again, a guy that can come off the bench and score, can run the point. He's averaged at least 15.5 points per game each of the last 4 seasons, 19.1, 21.2, 16.5, and 15.6. Very good, again, shooter, 46.4% for his career from the field, 37.6 from deep. Again, I said a former rookie of the year. So, if you want to lean or put your hat on that, has a ton of skill there. The big thing too with the Brogdon trade, which was the most shocking thing I saw, and I think a lot of people thought the same thing, is they didn't have to use the TPE, the $17.1 million one that expires in less than 2 weeks. I think it's July 18th it gets done on. They didn't have to put Brogdon into that either. So they still have that TPE. Now I saw some reports that said the Celtics may not even use that, which might be a mistake. Like I would at least look to try to get something out of that before it expires. But the Brogdon thing's huge. A guy that you can Maybe we'll get into it here. Do you put him in the starting rotation, make him the starting point guard, and then bump Smart to the 2? Or do you have him come off the bench and kind of run point? That would move Derek White to the 2. And then there's obviously the question too, is the Celtics have a ton of guards now. So who is the odd man out when it comes to guards? I think it's a pretty easy answer. I think Peyton Pritchard might not have a spot on this team anymore unless you want to, maybe have him run be the 2. And then, but they did sign Sam Hauser, I saw yesterday, to a 3-year deal. So he is here to stay for the long term, it would appear. So it looks like Peyton Pritchard, like I said, is probably going to be a guy that either doesn't have a spot in the rotation next year, has to fight for that, or could maybe well be moved in another deal. But right now, Brad Stevens, like I said, a great offseason last year. And I think he topped that in 2 moves in the first day of free agency in very quick succession. My buddy, Pat, who listens in from time to time, he coined him Swindler Stevens, I think was what he said. So a nickname that I think we should kind of take and run with. I'll give him all the credit in the world because he's 100% right. Like you saw that trade, and you're like, ooh, the Celtics got Brogdon. They probably gave up something good for him. Like you maybe thought like, maybe Grant Williams or maybe Pritchard had to go in that deal. And it's like you said, Tice, who nobody I think wanted here to begin with. Neesmith, who I was a little worried, like we talked about in the offseason when they had their kind of, goodbye meeting or however you want to describe it. And they talked about, Neesmith being a guy that needs to step up. Maybe we think Neesmith is going to have a bigger role next year. When you and I discussed that, like, do you trust Neesmith to make the jump? Now you don't have to worry about it. And then, like we said, Stauskas, Fitz, and Morgan were guys that were going to play in, the final 4 minutes of a 20-point win or loss. Like, so those are guys that you don't really care to see leave either. But great deal both ways. Brogdon and Gallinari, absolutely, for Brad Stevens. He's crushing it again in his now second full offseason with the new position as team, what do you want to call it? Owner or GM or whatever. Not owner or
I get you. Yeah.
It's the word. Yeah.
Shout out quick to Chris Blackie in the chat. Saw him there. What's up?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Brad Stevens, ever since he took in this new role, kind of felt like this guy that had like a pretty good grasp on, modern NBA talent, like how to run a team,
what the team needs,
what a team needs, like more of a pulse of the league and certain players than Danny Ainge did. That's partially because, Stevens is a younger mind. He's, got like a more like, I don't know if I'd say more aggressive, but a more like, maybe aggressive is the word because he just like gets shit done.
He's a more, I feel like smarter, it's smarter, aggressive, not really perfect. Yep. That's a perfect way to describe it. Like they were talking about this. I was listening to, I think it was Touch and Rich this morning. They had Adam Jones on and he was discussing, the prior stuff with Danny Ainge and the difference between him and Brad Stevens. Is like Brad Stevens isn't afraid to make these type of moves, give up the draft picks to take a chance on a guy like Derek White if it works out. Or I think he said he would make the moves to get guys that like fit the team well. Like the Derek White trade in the end there's been some arguments, did it work out or not? Because he struggled in the finals, but he was a guy that fit right into the rotation well. He compared it to the 2019 Celtics where you had guys like Marcus Morris and Terry Rozier who maybe should have been moved because they obviously needed or wanted starting roles, weren't going to work off the bench. And then obviously bringing in Kyrie Irving didn't work out as well. So he kind of said that's where Stevens is different, is he's making these moves to get guys that seemingly fit the system. And he, like I said, kind of knows what the Celtics need, like a guy like Gallinari and a guy like Brogdon. And again, it'd be interesting to see where Brogdon fits. Do you see him in the starting role, the starting rotation to start the season? Or are you thinking he's more coming off the bench to start things out?
I don't know for sure, but I like that they have him given his skill set in the mold because Marcus Smart is, he can shoot at times, but he's primarily a defender. Having Brogdon gives you a point guard option that is more of a primary shooter and a better shooter than Smart. So it might rub him the wrong way a little bit. It might be a little bit of an adjustment, but I think it's just there's a really good chance, more likely than not, that it maximizes Marcus Smart to focus on his biggest like aspects of his game on the defensive side of the ball more so than he has in the past, and could make him an even better defender and like really ground him in that role because sometimes he's just not the best shooter and he doesn't have the best shot selection like tendencies.
Oh, we know that for sure. Yep.
Yeah. So I like it. I think it's going to be a little bit of a feeling out process, and it's going to, take a lot of actual game reps to figure it out how to work perfectly, or at least close to perfectly. So it's an interesting situation, one that I think could work out like extremely well. So
yeah, I think so too. And I'm glad you alluded to the point of, it's going to probably take some time to work out. That's why I think you're probably going to see Brogdon off the bench, maybe the first month of the season, just to, like you said, get that familiarity with the team, build a rapport with everybody. And then, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have, again, like you look at, I have it in the outline here, what the potential lineups could look like. Like that first one with Brogdon coming off the bench is the point. White, Hauser, Gallinari, and Grant Williams is your next five. Like that's a pretty good option. 5 options to go to. I know Hauser's kind of the odd man out there. You don't really know what to expect from him, but like, I feel like the Celtics this are probably going to be more interchangeable this season. Like you can give a guy you don't have to rely so much on Al Horford. Rob Williams, obviously there's questions with him, which is why as we get into, what could be coming next or what the Celtics should do next, there is the need, at least I think, for a third center just to have that depth. But I mean, like I said, I think the start of the season, you'll probably see Brogdon come off the bench just to, give him some time to get accustomed to everybody. And then by the second, third month of the year, he's probably going to be in the starting lineup and you're probably interchanging Horford, Rob, depending on, the matchup, the who they're playing that night, of course. And then, if guys can stay healthy or not too, because Brogdon, staying healthy, his health is, I think, he's dealt with some injuries in the past as well. So not the most, I get not the most not reliable, but like, what I'm getting at here. Like,
what you're saying.
Yeah.
One question I have for you is do you think there's a chance that we see, like, how often do you think there's a chance we see Brogdon and Smart on the court at the same time? Like, can Brogdon play shooting guard if needed and take a little pressure off Jaylen
I think
Brown,
so.
or is he a pure point guard?
I think he's probably more of a pure point guard. I mean, he has the shooting ability. Like I said, he's 37% from 3, over 45 from just all around. So he's a decent shooter, but I think he's looked at as more, like I said, is that true point guard that Celtics fans think they need or thought the Celtics needed. But the same thing, like you talked about earlier, with Smart now probably moving to the 2, and him not having to work or rely so much on handling the ball, setting guys up. You could maybe just tell Marcus Smart, hey, go out there and just primarily be the defensive guy, like you said. Go out there and put all your energy out on the defensive end. We have Brogdon to cover us on the offensive end, running the point and stuff. So I'm curious to see how those two guys operate together because they're kind of similar players. Like Smart's obviously the better defensive player. Brogdon, like you said, is probably the better offensive player. So I feel like those two guys, and that's why I think too, if further down the line, if they're both in the starting lineup, then the Brogdon, Smart, Brown, Tatum, and either Al or Rob at the 5 lineup is probably your best lineup. But again, I think that's going to take time again for Brogdon to, get accustomed to everything. So you're probably not going to see that lineup at least for like a month, but I definitely think they could both be incredibly successful in the starting lineup together.
Yeah. I mean, all these different options kind of make it seem like they could get pretty creative and maybe make themselves a little more unpredictable. So in a way, like, I trust other coaches around the league to be able to figure things out on the fly, but I don't know. It's a different look to the Celtics team. I don't want to say it's a new identity because I don't think it goes that far, but it's definitely a different, change of pace, which is nice. And I like that they got it done in short order. So
exactly. You didn't have to wait around. There wasn't really ever really a threat of, especially with the Gallinari thing. Like I said, as soon as he was traded and there was a talk of him being waived, it's like, all right, I think the only other team was maybe the Bulls, if I'm right, that were involved. But there was never really it seemed like even with that, it was like he's going to the Celtics 100%. The Brogdon move, the Celtics have been linked to Brogdon in the past, so there was a little rumblings, I remember, but like I don't think anybody expected them, like you said, to go out and trade for him like that on the first day of free agency. So that was, again, obviously great to see them go out and be, like you said, be aggressive after being 2 wins away from the finals. Like you knew changes needed to be made, some things needed to be tinkered with, and they went out and got 2 of the best options I think that they could. Yeah,
I agree. 2 guys, one of them more so than the other, that a lot of people out there are probably expecting the Celtics to be acquiring. Thomas Bryant and TJ Warren. I say TJ Warren because I know a couple of people that really wanted him. He signed with Brooklyn. Thomas Bryant, who's a center, is ending up in LA with the Lakers. So your thoughts on those?
Yeah, the Bryant one, I mean, just from the position of need, like TJ Warren would have been a nice piece. Again, veteran option that could have came off the bench, but he's kind of similar to Gallinari, small forward. Warren can, I think, play the shooting guard spot as well. Very good shooter, but with Gallinari, you really didn't need Warren at that point. I was shocked he went to, again, Brooklyn. I don't know what they're doing this offseason. Again, you would think if they were going to try to trade Durant and Kyrie, then maybe they'd be more sellers than buyers. Or
why is that?
I don't know, Brian Windhorst. Please please take 30 minutes to tell me and then kind of say a bunch of words, but really tell me nothing in the end.
Trade.
Yeah.
Strange trade.
Yeah, I was surprised Warren went to Brooklyn, but I mean, if they're keeping everything together, which now reports seem to think that they're going to, then that's a really good piece for them to be off their bench. The Bryant one stings a little more because, again, it's a center that the Celtics could have used. Still a guy that's still very young, 24 years old, does have some injury history. So there was, thoughts that he would probably come cheap if they could get him. I don't know if there's been any reports out there of what the Lakers had to pay to get him. But it came down and it seemed like to the Celtics and the Lakers, all the reports seem to indicate those were the two teams involved. Chris Hayes of Yahoo Sports had that. Greg Schwartz, Bleacher Report had that as well. But Schwartz had the report that ends up sticking true today. He said before the quote, the Celtics are probably going to miss out on Bryant as the Lakers are interested in reuniting with their former center this offseason. Of course, the Lakers drafted him a couple of years ago. He said that the Lakers could potentially offer him a starting role. That is obviously what they did, and that's why Thomas Bryant this morning signed there. Stings, like I said, would have been a really good backup piece to take the pressure off of Al Horford or relieve Rob Williams at times. So that one stinks that he ends up in LA. But there are other options. LaMarcus Aldridge's name has come up. We've talked about him in the past. Does have that Ime Udoka connection with the Spurs, is 36 years old. So how much does he really have left in the tank? Had a decent year with Brooklyn last year, just under 13 points per game in 47 games. Played 22.3 minutes, or that's what he averaged. I can't see him if he comes here playing really any more than that. And then one other interesting I wanted to get your thoughts on, because I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this. This is from Boston.com's Connor Roach. Brought this up. He said, quote, by including Daniel Tice in the trade for Brogdon, the Celtics open a need for a third center. The Celtics have reportedly inquired about free agent center Thomas Bryant. Of course, this was before we knew that he was signing with the Lakers. He said, quote, if they're unable to land him, former Celtic and now Piston center Kelly Olynyk's salary fits into the trade exception. Of course, that's 17.1 million TPE that we keep discussing. So with Bryant now off the market, with the Celtics still in need of a center, would you look to potentially bring back Kelly Olynyk?
Yeah, I would, because I just don't really feel like he'd cost all that much.
I don't think so either. Yep.
Like, I'm talking not really much in terms of value, but like with Peyton Pritchard maybe being the odd man out, do you float his name out there? You float like
I think I would, yeah.
Pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I think maybe you do both.
Pritchard in a first. I
don't think it would. Yeah.
Like Pritchard in a second. Is Pritchard even too much? Can you get him for like 2 second-round picks?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure that out too, because like I think Olynyk, yeah, he still has 2 more years left on his contract, so maybe the extra year of like being able to control him, that might garner another, like you said, a second round pick if they go that direction, or maybe you just swap Olynyk for Pritchard straight up. I think it's obviously Pritchard doesn't have a spot in the rotation here right now, like I just mentioned, so maybe that makes him more just the Celtics want to get something out of him, and you do Olynyk straight up. Exactly, too.
They're younger, so I mean,
exactly,
if they get a guy they could find a role for, maybe more so than he would have here. Maybe they do have interest in that and adding Pritchard into the young core they're building there. So,
my big thing too is like I have in the outline of like if you can bring if you see a need to bring Daniel Tice back and you think he can work here, like then I don't think you should have any problem. Anybody, if there is one, if people see this and go, oh, why would you want to bring Kelly Olynyk back here? Like, and again, people said that about Tice, but you should be able to bring Olynyk back here if you can get him at a good price. Again, he's not going to play a ton of minutes. Like you have Rob, you have Al. He's going to give you probably 20 to 22, which is, like I said, what Aldridge could maybe give you. I wouldn't hate Kelly Olynyk back here at all, because again, it's something you need. It's not going to cost you a lot. And if he's available, I think he's probably, I don't know what's out there left for free agent centers outside of Aldridge. Olynyk's probably better than a lot of the guys that are available. So, and again, it's a guy that, that the Celtics know. He's had success here. 1 year playoff game and arguably a playoff series a couple of years back. We all know the Kelly Olynyk game. Remember that very fondly. So he's a guy that I think a lot of people will. Yeah, I think he would be welcome back here with open arms if you can get him.
Yeah, I mean, works for me unless they were to somehow overpay for him. But given Brad Stevens' history and his new role these past couple of years, I don't really think that is something fans need to worry about. But outside of the Celtics, there is a lot going on in the NBA as usual, when free agency opens and stuff, but it's been quite an explosive one outside of the big signings and a few trades here and there because the whole situation in Brooklyn. Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I feel like you're probably as tired as I am of hearing about it, but just the ever changing, obviously you have the start of free agency, Kyrie Irving. There's obviously the talk of he wants out. He's going to be traded. he picks up his option, surprisingly, exercised the last year of his deal with Brooklyn. So he is back. But now, of course, there's talks of potentially trading him straight up for Russell Westbrook. LeBron James has kept tabs on him. He wants him in LA. Kyrie wants to stay in Brooklyn. Who the hell knows what the deal is? He and Durant want to play together. He and Durant want to leave. It's just been an absolute joke, for lack of a better term. There's obviously been the talk of Durant wanting out, and if he goes somewhere, he wants to play with, two superstar level all-star level players. Doesn't want to be part of a rebuild. So it's just been absolutely insane from their standpoint. Like I don't know what to make about it anymore, because it's, like I said, it's
crazy,
changing by the minute, it seems like. And
this is honestly like an Impractical Jokers thing, where all the guys are just like in some room somewhere, be like, "Hey, Kevin,
do this. Yeah. Yep.
Hey, Kyrie just opted back in. Why don't you request a trade?
Like, get
just
out of there." Yeah.
Like,
you won't do it. Yeah.
Like, it's just the NBA is just fucking goofy.
It's just really parody nonstop. I mean, the big thing with Kyrie,
I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not like, I hate this. Like, it's not cool or anything. Like, it's not fun. It is exciting to see this type of shit happen, but it's goofy at the same time. Both can be true. So.
Yeah, well, that's why I said last week it's eye emoji season, or however I worded it, eye emoji watching season or whatever. We're like, yeah. But I mean, the Kyrie Irving thing is the funniest thing about it, because like it really all depends on, what teams do you take a chance on him, and it doesn't seem like anybody else wants to except for the Lakers. There's two, I think. I'm trying to remember how the tweet of the report I saw worded it, were because the Brooklyn Nets have Ben Simmons. They can't trade for another guy that's on like a rookie contract or something. So I know Miami was interested in trading for Kevin Durant if he became available, and they couldn't trade for Bam in that deal because of some, again, weirdo contract clause or something like that. So it's kind of funny that Ben Simmons, who still has not played a game for them yet, who knows when he's going to suit up, is kind of blocking them from making a deal if they want to. Like, that's one of the funnier things too.
The funniest thing about the situation when it comes to Simmons for me is that picture he posted on Instagram when he's got that, like, I don't even want to recreate the face because it's going to make me cringe.
He's like on that grind pretty much.
Where he like, have you seen Breaking Bad? Have you watched Breaking Bad?
Not, yeah. I'm one of the few people that, yeah.
There's a character named Hector Salamanca who, in his old age, he like loses his ability to speak. He's got like a breathing tube, and he's got this face all the time when he gets angry, and it looks exactly
just like what Ben Simmons did.
And I saw someone call it out, and I totally lost it laughing.
That was the funny part about that, because I know that the picture he obviously posted on his Instagram, and then it was like 20 minutes later, the report of Durant wanting a trade came out. So it's like, oh, he saw Ben Simmons's Instagram post and was like, fuck this, I'm getting out of here. Like,
that was another thing the Impractical Jokers probably did. Like, hey, Ben Simmons, post a stupid Instagram story photo, making you look like a douchebag.
You won't do it, yeah. But
the thing is, he will.
Yeah, he's a fucking anything, idiot. Yeah. Like, but yeah, I mean, just some of the other big things. I mean,
tons going on.
Yeah, Bradley Beal, his name obviously came up a lot with the Celtics. No surprise that he declined his player option, but then re-upped with Washington. So that was kind of the thing I was going to ask you. I was talking to a couple of friends at work the other day, and I said, over under 2.5 years before Bradley Beal wants out of Washington. Because I think we talked about that, I think, last week. A very, I think, realistic possibility that if Washington can't put a team around him, which, they haven't been able to do so yet, how long before he wants out of here? Were you surprised at all that he declined but then came back? Do you think he was gonna, walk in free agency, or what were your overall thoughts on Beal?
I really didn't know what to expect, because the whole thing, like the big news came out about him, then he's like, said something like, what was he? He's like, nah, that's not true. Or like, nah, well, like, I don't really.
He did the eye thing,
but yeah, my hope over the past few years is just like eventually finding themselves in a scenario where they can pick up Beal and on the free agent market, preferably over a trade, because you probably have to trade Jaylen Brown, Rob Williams, or a litany of other assets,
which I would not do, and you wouldn't either, as we know.
But yeah, I mean, I guess he just doesn't like winning. It's kind of weird, but
I said, he'll be gone from there in a year or two, when he realizes
that's
that
what everybody's been saying, and then he still doesn't do it. Like, I kind of feel the same way about Lillard. Like, Lillard has this crazy loyalty.
Yeah, that's He's a great one too.
Weird. Because they're building something with the kid they drafted this year. It's pretty good. Anthony Simons is pretty solid. He just got a big extension. Nurkic is good, but like, what are they really building there? Like, what's the loyalty?
I'll give Portland more credit than I will Washington. Like, Washington's made some head scratching moves over the last couple of years. I mean, you can't knock the guy for like, if again, Bill Lillard, kind of the same deal of like, they want to obviously play where they were drafted and the teams they were brought up by. So I'll give him credit there.
Look at the league you're in, and like,
exactly.
What is your loyalty for?
Like you said, after
chess pawn of a league.
Yeah. After 4 or 5 years of just completely getting just the shit kicked out of you left and right, especially in Beal's case, like at least Lillard's been to the playoffs a couple times, has won some playoff series, won some games. Like Bradley Beal has really not been on any winning Washington teams. Like, how long are you going to stay there for before? And again, that's why I think sign the contract now, get the massive upgrade and pay, and then in 2 years, say, if this isn't working, I want out of here. Like, I need to trade because I need to get the hell out of here. James Harden was another interesting one. He declined his player option, but all reports seem to think he is going to re-up with Philly on a more team-friendly deal. Of course, they've already made moves acquiring PJ Tucker, who opted out of declined his player option with Miami. That was kind of a deal that stung, seeing him go to Philadelphia, because I thought he would have been a great piece for the Celtics to sign. He goes.
James Harden, I've heard a report that his deal is going to include a majority stake or ownership in numerous McDonald's around the Philadelphia area because he's a fat fuck.
So. Okay, that's right. For a second, I was like, I don't know what this is, where you're going with this, but
yeah, he's just like that guy.
I was shocked when I heard that, though. Like, he was going to take a team-friendly deal. I'm like, wow, that doesn't seem like anything that James Harden would do. He
had an option for like $47.1 million, didn't he?
I think, yeah, it was something insane that he declined. Which again, like, I guess, at this point, you don't. Again, maybe give him credit that he is thinking more of the team than himself. Which again, I wouldn't think that was in James Harden's DNA.
He'll still quit on them.
Exactly. That's why, like the PJ Tucker deal, the Philly, that was kind of the one thing that worked, because I'm like, oh, PJ Tucker's a guy that has some dog in him, and he'll tell you how it is. Doesn't take any bullshit. So maybe that's a good deal for Philly. That maybe they needed a guy like that to offset the Hardens and the Embiids that kind of, like you said, crumble when it comes crunch time. Embiid's gotten better at not doing that of late, but James Harden is still, in my opinion, this very much that guy. So maybe the PJ Tucker deal, a guy that has won in the past, has gotten over the hump a couple times. Maybe that improves Philly and makes them a little bit more of a threat in the East. But again, I'm still not going to really hang my hat on that too much. Just trying to think of some other big moves. Miami, interesting that Victor Oladipo, who I saw the report wanted in free agency to go find a team that he was going to be able to start for, and then re-sign like minutes later with Miami. I don't know if they promised him a starting role or not, but he's back with Miami. Milwaukee's made a couple of moves. Pat Connaughton exercised his player option. They re-signed Bobby Portis after he declined his. Wesley Matthews was apparently re-signed, and then Serge Ibaka. I've seen some conflicting reports. I saw they were going to re-sign him, but then I saw a Celtics article today that said he's available if the Celtics wanted to go out and sign a backup center. So I don't know if it's official that he is back with Milwaukee or not. If he is, that kind of stinks, because we've talked about him in the past. I think he'd be a pretty solid choice for the Celtics. And then they signed Joe Ingles the other day. That's a good, outside scoring option. Milwaukee, as we know, in that playoff series with the Celtics, really struggled at times. So Ingles is a guy that can knock down the three pretty well. The Clippers made an interesting move. They signed John Wall after he declined. He exercised his player option, but then Houston waived him. So he goes to the Clippers. Of course, the Clippers will link to Kyrie. I think that probably takes them out of the running, getting him. Be interesting to see how that works out, with Kawhi Leonard coming back, Paul George. We've talked about him in the past, having to carry that team last year. Surprised at all by the John Wall move, or you just kind of indifferent, like it's John Wall, he's over the hump at this point, and, does he have much to give?
The Clippers just felt like when there was stuff going around about John Wall playing somewhere else, like that was one of the first teams that came to my mind. The Clippers, like, just seems like a team that has and if they can get him back to normal form, or at least somewhere close, it's another option besides George and Leonard. However much Leonard plays, I feel like that guy hasn't played in 10 years.
Yeah, he's been out for a while. Yep.
If they think he can complement them well, because he's probably still a pretty good passer, I imagine, and can do something. And I mean, he's not making that insane money that he would have been making with the Rockets. Yeah. So I mean, 2 years, $13.2 million is not too crazy. So
one of the funnier moves of the offseason so far, the New York Knicks, of course, because just so New York Knicks. They got one of the bigger fishes, Jalen Brunson, signed him for 4 years and $105 million. And yesterday it came out they're going to get whacked for tampering with them, because why would the New York Knicks do anything to help themselves? The report I saw was I think they had been talking to him. Obviously, that's what the tampering period is you're not supposed to talk to free agents before free agency starts. And they did that. And I think the way the Mavericks were arguing it, that the Dallas didn't even have a chance to talk to him before the Knicks swooped in and signed him. So that's good. The Knicks go out, and some people think, may have overpaid a little bit for Jalen Brunson because he's a nice player, but I don't know if he's $105 million of a nice player. Like that seems like a little bit of an overpay. And then of course they're going to get hit for tampering. I can't remember what the penalty is for tampering, if it's fines or loss of draft picks or whatever it might be, but such a New York Knicks move that you go out and get the free agent that everyone wanted you to sign, or they really wanted to sign, and then you get in trouble for doing so. So classic very funny there. Exactly. Classic Knicks. Yep. Some of the Supermax signings, some surprises. Zach LaVine, who would have been a free agent, he signs a 5-year, $215 million Supermax with the Bulls. That'll be interesting to see how that works out because, of course, LaVine was dealing with a pretty serious knee injury last year that he played on. So I'll be curious to see if, his knee holds up throughout that deal. Darius Garland of the Cavaliers signed a 5-year, $193 million Supermax extension. John Morant did the same with the Grizzlies. The two-time MVP, Nikola Jokic, signed a record-breaking 5-year, $264 million deal to stay with the Nuggets. Devin Booker signed a 4-year, $224 million extension to stay with the Suns. Karl Anthony Towns, he re-upped with the T-Wolves on a 4-year, $224. Bradley Beal, like we said, 5 for $251. And then the one I want to get your thoughts on most, because we've talked about him in the past and we've joked about him in the past, the Pelicans were at a crossroad this offseason and decided to give Zion Williamson a 5-year, $193 million Supermax extension that reportedly could reach up to $231 million for a guy that has not played. And it seems like you made the joke about Kawhi not playing and God knows how long. Like Zion's played one game or one season in the 3 or 4 years he's been in the league so far. So good luck to the Pelicans to see how that deal plays out.
This is just stupid. The NBA is stupid. Like,
Oh, I saw everyone's losing their minds of him dunking the ball in the G League or the Summer League, whatever the hell he's rehabbing in. It's like, yeah. I did the over under of
offensive lineman.
Yeah, I did the over under of the 2.5 years of how long it'll take Bradley Beal to get out of Washington. Let's do the over under on the weight of Zion at the end of that contract. Put it at like 280 and a half over or under of what the hell he's going to weigh by the end of that, because he is a guy that is again, when he's out there, superstar talent, but there's a lot of questions about him
scamming this team. Like he's just scamming them.
Yep,
they're allowing it to happen.
Yeah, not a great look. But again, like that's the tricky decision the Pelicans had this offseason. He is obviously a guy, like I said, number 1 overall pick with a ton of talent when he's out there, but it's a huge when and it's a huge if he's going to play. We talked about it in the past. That the reports of him not even wanting to be with New Orleans, him wanting out after a couple of years, thinking that they haven't done enough for him. And we were like, buddy, you've played one full season and, haven't really shown anything other than, the couple games you played in. So who gives you the right to kind of make those arguments? So like I said, interesting decision for the Pelicans. Again, I think it's a deal they probably had to make. But the fact that they can get up to 231 million is just absolutely insane. Like that's a ton of money for a guy with questions. Then 2 trades that kind of went down. One that was a little linked to the Celtics because the guy you and I wanted. Kevin Huerter surprisingly went to the Kings. You said it before we jumped on, maybe one of the better moves the Kings have made in God knows how long. Yeah, maybe ever. The Hawks received Maurice Harkless, Justin Holiday, and a future first-round pick for Kevin Huerter. So that one stung, like we said, because the Celtics, we wanted him here. And then Utah made the big move of the offseason so far. An absolutely massive trade that sends Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and in return, the Jazz get Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, who is just getting tossed around like he's used garbage at this point, which is hilarious to me because I can't stand Patrick Beverley. All the talk of, him being the guy in Minnesota, I'm that guy. And then again, he gets dealt, just see you later.
JK.
Yeah, exactly.
Leandro. We don't agree. We're trading.
Yeah, see you later. We have a better option, and it's Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year. So we'll take that. Also going to the Jazz in that trade were Leandro Balmero, Walker Kessler, and Jared Vanderbilt. And then a 2023
drafted Walker Kessler, didn't they?
I think so. Yeah, he's like brand new, like hasn't played a game.
Auburn, I think.
I believe so. But yeah, just we'll trade him in the deal too, throw him in there. They also got a 2023 first round pick, a 2025 first round pick, the right to swap picks in 2026, a 2027 first round pick. And because it's the NBA, you can trade a 2029 first round pick as well that is protected. So an absolutely insane deal. Do you have any thoughts on either or both?
the funniest part of the deal is the 2026 pick swap. Like, you
Just
have
throw that,
no
yeah.
idea what is going on in 2026 right now.
Yep.
You're just doing that just to, like, oh, like, this feels like a right move.
Just
like,
to be a-holes, like confuse us a little bit more.
Let's make this trade as big as possible. Let's just add this stupid shit to it.
Yep.
Like, the NBA is so
ridiculous.
strange. Such a strange, goofy league. But I mean, it's a huge pickup for the Timberwolves, a team trying to like take the next step.
Yep.
They've got a good young core they're building, and of course they had to give up some of that young core to do so. But I feel like they still got a solid team. I mean, they got D'Angelo Russell, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert now, Anthony Edwards. Pretty solid group of players there, and I don't know a ton about the rest of their roster, but I mean, other than that, like, the picks are a lot. I feel like you're not really giving up that much outside of Kessler.
Beasley's a decent young player. He was a guy that had some standout moments, especially in the playoffs. But yeah, nothing crazy. I mean, Beverly's, again, just a role guy at this point. But maybe a tough guy that Utah maybe needed. Obviously there was, I think that was one of the knocks on them is because Gobert, obviously there's been not talks of his character, but obviously had the moment a couple years ago with the reporters and the COVID stuff. So there was the rumors that him and Donovan Mitchell, were not seeing eye to eye on stuff, and one of them was going to have to get moved eventually. Rudy Gobert is a nice player. I don't know if the pick swap in 2026 is for first round picks as well. I don't know if Gobert is worth 5 first round picks and 5 players potentially. Like, that's insane.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Again, very good player, multi-defensive player of the year, all-star, the works. I'm curious to see how he works out with Minnesota, because obviously Karl Anthony Towns is going to have to move off the center spot now. I'm so curious to see how that works out. I think obviously it'll be pretty good. And, just for a joking standpoint, we talked about the Timberwolves obviously having all those problems in the playoffs with protesters. Maybe they get Rudy Gobert to, knock some people off of their court when they decide to run it or rush it or chain themselves to the basket or glue themselves to the floor or whatever. So maybe that was in the back of their minds too, that, hey, we have a rim protector, and then just we needed an all-out court protector last year because our security just was complete crap. So get Gobert here. That'll help him out too.
Yeah, man. For any player, that many assets is a big deal. So,
exactly. Yeah, it's insane.
It's pretty nuts. But any final basketball thoughts?
No, I was just like we talked about. I didn't really do it in the Celtics stuff, but if you had to grade just off the top of my head right now, grade Brad Stevens' offseason so far, what are you giving him?
A+.
A+. Okay, I'm gonna go with an A-, just because I think, again, you have to add one final piece, make it a backup center, and then you are right there at an A+ with you. So very good offseason so far. Let's hope he can get 1 or 2 more guys and go from there.
Good enough.
Yep.
Good enough. Until they get a center. But
exactly.
I like it. I like it a lot so far. Segueing to hockey, one of my favorite episodes of the year. Next week will be my second favorite episode because we'll have free agency. But next week will be the 13th, so it'll be the day of. So that'll be fun.
Maybe get some breaking news as we do it.
Yeah, we certainly will. Jim Montgomery named Bruins head coach. It got to a point where I was so desperate for it to not be David Quinn that I started asking around and seeing if I could get some intel on who it's going to be, because it seems like it went back and forth between Quinn and Montgomery. Leach was in the mix, other candidates in whatever part of the process, but came down to Quinn and Montgomery. Goes to Montgomery. Quinn looks like he might be getting hired by San Jose in the future, so good luck to them, because it's just not a very exciting hire, in my opinion. Jim Montgomery, I think there are some similarities to Cassidy, but they clearly just wanted a different voice. But maybe it's like they see some similarities in style, but it's not Cassidy. So that's the big thing. I think here, the reports of him having a big hand in Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas's breakout seasons is exciting. So maybe he can help guys like Jake DeBrusk if he sticks around, continue to evolve. Jack Studnicka if he's in the mix, especially earlier in the season with injuries. Potentially trying different lineup adjustments and looks. Trent Frederick, maybe he channels a little bit more offense from Trent Frederick, I wonder. And, guys like Mark McLaughlin, Oscar Steen that'll be in the mix. I assume he could be a pretty big help for them as well. So it's exciting. I like it a lot. Big fan of the move. On top of that, speaking of Jake DeBrusk, he rescinds his trade request. First reported by Ryan Rashog. That was the first report I saw. I don't think anybody had it before him. For me, though, with DeBrusk, In an ideal world, I think you still trade him. Sure, he can be an impact player, but I'd prefer to sell high on him. And maybe it's good to think maybe you don't sell high on him and he has even more value next year if he does really good under Montgomery. But I don't know if I want to take that chance. And
I
if
don't
they
know if
want
you
to get
can
in the
afford
first
to.
round, yeah, if they can get into the first round of the draft, I think they're going to have to move Jake DeBrusk to do so. So there's a lot of cards on the table right now, for lack of a better phrase. What do you think about the whole Jake DeBrusk trade requests and some Jim Montgomery stuff?
Although I agree with you on pretty much everything with the Montgomery thing. I think we've talked about it a lot that the Quinn hiring just wouldn't have been a flashy move. Again, we joked about it last week that we thought it was going to be the case because of all the Boston connections and everything. So I like that. Not that they went outside the box because, like you said, Montgomery had been a guy they had been linked to for a while. But I think Quinn probably was just going to be the safe move, for lack of a better term, if they hired him. So I'm glad they didn't go in that direction. And like you mentioned, Montgomery, from everything I've heard and a couple people I've heard from, like you said, seems to be a guy that can get a lot of the young guys. So that'll be exciting to see if he can, like you mentioned, tap into some of the Bruins younger guys. The DeBrusk thing, on the other hand, for me, we talked a little bit about this yesterday when I saw it come out, because I was later to seeing it than you were. Just something about it bugs me. Like, again, it's just coincidentally that Bruce Cassidy gets fired, or whatever the hell you want to describe it, mutually let go of. They fired him. And now Jake DeBrusk wants to be here. Like, again, it just goes into the discussion we've had in the past, or the thought I've had that, like, DeBrusk, like, you do it to yourself when you struggle, and then you think you're going to play bad for weeks on end and then not punished, but like not get away with it. So it's just something about it doesn't sit right with me. Like, again, it just kind of shows to me that, like, DeBrusk is soft in a sense. Like,
I get that.
It just, I don't know. It's, again, it bugs me a little bit, but I'm with you again. Like, we'll get into the draft stuff here coming up, that you kind of alluded to me. Cause I was curious with all the reports on how the Bruins wanting to get back into the first round, how they would do that. And you brought up, DeBrusk probably being their best trade asset. So, like, again, maybe moving there, but I don't know. Just that, again, the whole thing just doesn't sit right with me that, the Cassidy, again, that we've talked about has been the wrongfully fired or let go of guy. And now DeBrusk is kind of sitting pretty and ends up getting what he wants after bitching and complaining for such a long time. Yeah,
it is kind of an awkward scenario, not like one either of us really love in terms of how it all went down with Cassidy in particular. But yeah, man, the interesting thing about DeBrusk too is if they keep him around and they do underachieve and they get to a point where they want to sell some pieces off, like Craig Smith could be sold off, Eric Howland could be sold off, Jake DeBrusk. I know I'm thinking very far ahead here. If DeBrusk has a good season and they feel like that's the time to trade him at the deadline, they could get a good amount for him. So maybe they don't do it now, they trade him later. Maybe it's not working however they want, whatever situation it could be. From Sweeney's comments too, we'll get to those in a little bit. I'm leaning towards them keeping him, but there's also the reports of them wanting at the end of the first round. It's like, who are they going to trade to do that? Like,
who do they have
so
that they can?
On. This freaking chaotic offseason is driving me crazy. Just sucks. It sucks that it has to be like this, because going into the offseason, it was like, maybe you trade DeBrusk, maybe you figure out what happens with Bergeron, maybe Krejci comes back, and that's pretty much it to an extent. But now we have just so much more with the whole Cassidy thing and Sweeney criticism and potentially moving into the first round and surgeries, and it's just fucking bonkers. There was one to add on top of it too. We don't have it in the outline. I forgot to add it, or just I wanted to touch on it quickly because I saw it and I wanted to get your thoughts on how it's even possible. But I saw a report last night that they were interested or might be interested in bringing in Vincent Trocheck. How would that even work? You don't have the cap space for that, and again, like I don't think it would be a great fit here because of the stuff with Marchand. Like, again, sports, you can overcome that, I think. And obviously you have guys shake hands. The Red Sox had to do it with David Price and David Ortiz way back when. But like, that's a move that just doesn't, I feel like, it makes sense because they need obviously a second line center. But just, again, from the cap standpoint, and obviously you have bigger needs or just more, obviously we've talked in the past, you have to give Pasternak money when that comes time. Like, you don't really want to create a logjam when it comes to cap space. So I just didn't know if you had any sort of idea of what they could do to make that happen, or just like why that's even a possibility in the first place. Buying out Nick Foligno, okay, which they won't do. Craig Smith, they could trade Mike Riley, they could trade DeBrusk. Okay, they won't buy out Foligno. I want them to really bad, and I think there's merit to it, but they just don't have a huge history of buyouts under the Jacobs, administration and Don Sweeney.
Mhm.
Any extension of anywhere in the past you want to go. But like, I don't want a big contract right now that we have to worry about not aging well.
Mhm.
I've talked in the past where I think the NHL needs to get into a norm of being like, hey, we shouldn't give 5, 6, 7 year deals to guys that are 29 or 30 or like 28, just about to turn 29, whatever. I'm going to be fucking pissed if they give Vincent Trocheck a 5 or 6 year deal. Like, I like Trocheck. I do. I think he's a good player. I don't think he will hold up very well over like probably 3-4 years. He'll start to decline and it'll look like shit. And I think it makes way more sense to sign a center long term next year when you have Pasternak's new money in the books, that raise he's going to get. You have Smith coming off the books, Foligno coming off the books, Nosek, Howla, Connor Clifton's $1 million if you decide to let him go, if you want to add that extra. You have a much clearer picture. And, that will depend on Bergeron, if Krejci's back, if they're going to want to do another kick at the can. I doubt it.
Mhm.
There's just tons that can happen. And I really, really don't want a long-term deal for a center this year unless it's Kadri. And
Okay.
Kadri, this is in the unlikely scenario he could potentially sign for 3-4 years here, but I think he's going to look for 5 or 6 and probably get 5 or 6 from a team. So that sucks because I really want Kadri here at this point. I haven't forgiven him for the past, I'm not holding a grudge like some people, but Kadri's really fucking good. And he proved that this year. You say, he played with Colorado. Like, he can play with Paul and Pasternak here.
Yeah,
like,
and he'd be same production. Yeah, exactly. It's like you're not stepping down all that much. You might be stepping up in a sense.
Yeah, like, he'll be on the power play too. Like, come on,
plenty
now.
of opportunity to succeed.
Let's open our eyes a little bit. Yeah, of course they'd have to make it work in a perfect sense, because I don't think you're looking to sign him to even more than 4 years, ideally. But if you can pull that off, it's pretty masterful. If he, continues this production, hopefully you get him around like 8.25 million, because I'm not really cool with giving him anything more than that. 8 even makes me uneasy, but you got to give to get, and he earned it. Like, he won a fucking Stanley Cup. He scored a game-winning goal in the Stanley Cup Finals with a broken thumb, and he played his bag off while he's, getting water bottles thrown at him, going through shit on the ice, off the ice, with racial abuse.
I was gonna say racist,
family.
yeah.
Like, I've gained a significant amount of respect for Nazem Kadri, so that's why I want him. Like, I really do, but it's going to be tough to find that perfect deal, because he has merited a 5 or 6 year term to any team willing to take that risk, because he's 31 and $8 million plus. The $10 million number has been thrown out. I would be
insane.
Seriously pissed if we gave Nazem Kadri $10 million, because he's just not worth $10 million. Even if he had 100 points last year, I'm not giving $10 million to a 31-year-old center.
No, because that's a deal that'll blow up in their face, like it usually does. Not that they give that type of money out, but
yeah, it's crazy. Are you in the same boat on Kadri? I'm curious to see what your thoughts are.
Oh, I take him in a heartbeat here, but again, I'm the same as you. I wouldn't overpay for a guy that, as you get longer into that contract, things. Because I feel like that, like you said earlier, like the NHL should probably get away from the long-term deals. I feel like the NHL, maybe you could argue football, but the NHL, I feel like, is like you have a ton of risk with those type of deals, just because of the wear and tear on the season, and guys breaking down, and not being able to obviously live up. We've seen it here plenty of times, not being able to live up to the contracts that are signed. Like,
exactly.
So I agree with you there.
The thing with me too is, if you give a contract to Trocheck, and Kadri is like in a similar vein, I just like Kadri more as a player. I think
I would probably lean towards him too. Yeah.
If you sign Trocheck, I still don't think this team's going far in the playoffs. I'm not even guaranteeing them getting in the playoffs. Sure, that's a good move. Like, it helps the team. It helps the team more than it hurts it. But, like, is it really worth going for a deep playoff run? Of course it is, to the Jacobs family and to Sweeney for wanting to keep his job and the players, and for keeping a team that can make a run together, for Bergeron. I'm all for that. I get that. But I really don't see this team making a run at this point. Obviously, there's still a lot that can be done. Trades, free agency, whatever. But going back to the whole thing of waiting till next year to make a long-term offer to a center, I think it's way more preferable with the Pasternak money, you could potentially let literally all of Hala, Foligno, Nosek, Clifton,
all your bad contracts,
Smith,
pretty much.
You can practically let them all go if you want to, if you can plug
Mhm.
the holes well enough and let prospects move up. Studnicka, I think his long-term spot, if he earns it on this team, is on the wing. You know what Oscar Steen is capable of in an early career sense. Mark McLaughlin, I think, is going to be an NHL player.
Yep.
You have other guys, John Beecher, Brett Harrison, like anyone you could draft down the line too. I'm not rolling those guys out down the line. I don't want it this year. I want a simple offseason. I want a Bergeron deal. Whatever you want to do with DeBrusk, and try and reasonably put together a contending team, because that's what they're going to do, and see what can happen. Because if they don't make the playoffs with Vincent Trocheck on a 5-6 year term, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, it's going to look so bad.
I don't like the risk at all. I'd rather have the ideal short term for Kadri if you're looking for a center. But like I said earlier, I don't think it's likely you get him at 3 to 4 years. So that's a tough thing. And that just goes back to why, there's so much uncertainty with these guys. I'm kind of hesitant. I'd rather just sign Krejci and sign Bergeron and roll with that. Hopefully cheap AAV, leaning with incentives to make up for that, and you see what happens, because I don't think this team's making a run no matter what they do next season. That's just where I'm at, and it's not the worst year to do it. The 2023 draft is awesome, and the hype is only going to get stronger as the season goes on. It just goes back to this too. There's so much going on in an offseason that could have been tame for the most part, and I don't like it.
Nope.
I don't like it.
Nothing can ever be easy with this team. That's shown its ugly head the last couple off seasons.
It's crazy. But it gives us things to talk about.
Absolutely, plenty of content. That's for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of things to talk about, sidebar. That's funny. Bar Down on Instagram posted a video of Sidney Crosby partying at some bar, saying, "Looked like Sid holding his end of the bargain with Nathan McKinnon." And he's just like celebrating drinking at a bar, and McKinnon commented and said, "Haven't seen Sid since I won. Also, are you guys TMZ now? Painful." So that was pretty funny. It's a tough look for the Bar Down page.
Yep.
But back to Bruins real quick, though. We did have the report yesterday from Nick Alberga of Sportsnet at the Golden Muzzy on Twitter, saying, heading into the hashtag NHL draft, I'm hearing the hashtag NHL Bruins, who currently do not have a pick until late round 2, parentheses 54, are looking to get into the first round, something to keep an eye on. David Pagnotta from the fourth period as well, said, curious to see if Boston pulls this off this week. Heard they've got their eyes on a couple players expected to go in the mid to late first round. I like this. There's a lot of uncertainty in the draft, so I hope they would nail the pick. I don't have a ton of faith given Don Sweeney's history.
No, absolutely not.
I like that they're getting aggressive in terms of stocking the cupboard. I hope they nail it. Of course, I don't have a ton of faith, like I just said. But
I think you let Don Sweeney
getting aggressive. I like that they're aggressive in this, reportedly.
I think that you let Don Sweeney make the trade, because let's be honest, his trades haven't been the worst thing over the last couple seasons, especially obviously trade deadline stuff. So you let him make the trade and then get him the fuck out of the draft room. Let somebody else.
That would be funny.
Yeah, make the Bruce Tanks get out. Have Cam Neely, if he's. I'm assuming he has a ton of say in what goes into the draft. So maybe he's the one that makes the pick, or exactly a scout that has seen these guys play and knows that, like, hey, this is the next Matt Barzal. Let's get him and not the next Jake DeBrusk. Let's not go that headache again. Exactly. Let's not go through that headache for a third year in a row, or a third year out of the last however many. I'm cool with it too. Again, I like the aggressive feature, the aspect of it. Like, obviously, you've talked about this hole this team needs to fill. Be proactive, and if they can get into the first round, I wouldn't hate it. Again, it kind of leans on what do they have to give up. And what is it going to take to do that? You said DeBrusk. I know you threw Zaborov's name out there before we started. I don't know if I go that way.
I think if there's an off the board option, it's Zaborov, because just to add to a trade, not like as a centerpiece, because got a reasonable contract. He is coming off injury, but he showed good things last year. He's a former first round pick, cheap money, a guy looking for, obviously if he's signing with the Bruins, he's cool with what his situation looks like, but a guy that a team that's smart could say, like, hey, maybe we can give this kid more of an opportunity here We want him as a part of this deal. He's a good cost-controlled young defenseman for the next 2 years. I don't know. I think there's an off chance they do it, but coming off ACL surgery, them trying to get him back in the mix. They like what they saw last year. I don't see it, but if there's an off-the-board trade asset, I think it is Zaboral. Just to throw that out there for the people, something to gnaw on. But yeah, I just hope they don't screw it up if they do trade into the first round. I mean, we've talked in the past. We've checked the TikTok, and you listen to past episodes. I've talked a lot about how I think Jake DeBrusk can be leveraged to get into the first round. Mike Riley can as well. Anyone, Studnicka, Zaboral, picks to do so, whatever you need to do so, there are ways to do it. So that's exciting if they could do it and nail it. I think some potential trade partners they could look at to do so. Minnesota at 24. Now that Minnesota has pick 19, maybe they're willing to either try and move up or move one of their picks to acquire more assets. So I'm looking at 24. I don't think they would prefer to trade 19. Obviously, higher draft pick, keep the higher one. But Arizona at 27 to 31. I've had Arizona on my radar for a while. I think they could really use a guy like DeBrusk, a guy to buy an asset as you're rebuilding. You don't want to be really good next year, but to buy a fairly reasonably priced, good scoring winger for the next year or two.
Makes sense.
Do with him makes sense. Buffalo at 28, they've got 3 picks. Maybe you don't want to trade with Buffalo, trade a guy like DeBrusk there, but maybe if Buffalo is willing to give up their pick and at 28 and acquire more assets, maybe that works. Edmonton at 29, we know that DeBrusk is from the Western Canada area, so Edmonton could be a fit. His dad played for Edmonton. Winnipeg at 30, they have the Rangers pick. I wonder if they could want a guy like DeBrusk. We'll see what happens because they're potentially looking to trade Blake Wheeler. Maybe if they end up trading Wheeler, they have DeBrusk at much cheaper money to kind of fill the void there on the right side, as we've seen DeBrusk look pretty solid on the right side after the trade deadline, primarily with the Bruins. So those are some options. Those are, I think, the most likely spots they could look to trade. So keep an eye out for those. We'll see what happens. The Bruins picks, as we segue more into heavy draft stuff, 54-91 via Calgary in the Dan Vladar trade last year. They traded their third in the Mike Riley deal, so they have Calgary's. 119, 183, 200, which is via Ottawa from the Senishin Brown trade, and 215, which is their own 7th. So those are their picks for anybody who didn't know. And the draft. Before we get to the mock draft, I'll talk about some guys I think the Bruins could target and a couple of names they reportedly have their eye on. Ty Nelson, I think, is, if they're looking at right defenseman, I think if Ty Nelson, Seamus Casey, Elias Salamonson are available, they could target them. Just add to at the NHL level, they're pretty good at right D, but they could use another right D prospect if they feel strongly enough to do so and take one of those guys. As anyone who listens to me enough can guess, I want them to draft a center, though.
That was going to be my question.
Seamus Casey is my favorite player in the draft, and he's a right shot defenseman, so I wouldn't hate that, but I don't know if he'll be there at 54. Adam Ingram, they've drafted out of the USHL in the past. He's on the Youngstown Phantoms. He's a center. Gleb Trikazov, one of the more polarizing players in the class, has pretty insane scoring ability, but Russian players are going to be impacted by all the craziness going on in Russia right now, and some draft dodging or military dodging, whatever the right term is, dodging the Russian army, fake military IDs, Kirill Kaprizov being involved, Ivan Fedotov. I saw Artem Grushnikov, who's a Stars prospect, Denis Guryanov, I believe I saw as well. He's on the Stars. Yeah, that's a whole mess. So I don't know.
Ridiculous,
I think the Bruins will stick away from Russian prospects, stay away from Russian prospects this year because of all that craziness going on. Paul Ludwinski is another name that sticks out. These are guys around 54 in Bob McKenzie's final rankings, and scouts and teams take those rankings very seriously when they do come out. So worth noting those. I love Seamus Casey in particular. As I mentioned, Paul Ludwinski had a solid regular season and really stepped up for Kingston. Same team as Shane Wright, the number 1 potential pick, is on. He really stepped up. He's a center and a winger. I like what I've heard about Ludwinski. Wouldn't hate them taking him. I think Dylan James just kind of seems like a potential Bruin to me. He's he's branded as like a hardworking, like gritty winger that plays hard. Some project him as a 3rd or 4th liner. So we know that Sweeney likes putting primo picks on, i.e. Trent Frederick,
bottom 6
John
guys.
Beecher, I like John Beecher, but like you're leaving talent on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying this to crap on Dylan James, but he just kind of feels like a Bruins prospect to me. Listed by Brad Schlossman on Twitter, a quote from an NHL scout about him said, "He is a player who knows what he has to do to help his team win and goes and he plays that to that identity consistently." See, it's like a good player, but not a guy I'd be like chomping at the bit for. But it just like gut feeling feels like a Bruins type of guy. But he is going to the University of North Dakota in the fall. Actually, no, yeah, he's not already there. He won a Clark Cup with Sioux City in the USHL this year. So, yeah, seems like a Bruins type of guy, but we shall see. I'll keep an eye on for Dylan James, though, for sure. Other names real quick. Danny Zilkin, Philip Bystedt or Bystedt. I've heard multiple pronunciations. Ryan Green, who is BU bound. He's a center. Bryce McConnell Barker, Adam Ingram, as I mentioned earlier, Hunter Haidt. I don't really know a lot about him, but I feel like he's a mid rounds projected center. Bruins could like him. I've seen him walk to him a couple times as well. Jordan Gustafson, David Goyette, and Fraser Minton. Those are some names I'd look out for. Rumor has it they like Green and Goyette in particular, potentially Green if they were to trade, or Goyette if they were to trade into the first round even. I asked around to try to like figure this out when the whole situation was coming out about them potentially trading into the first round. And I also heard Goyette's name. Okay. Not to say that Green, the report of Ryan Green being of interest to them is not true, but I just heard Goyette. I didn't hear anything about Green, but Green's headed to BU.
Green, I was just going to say, we talked about it last week. Green fits the bill 100%.
Yep.
Like
he certainly does. But yeah, I was told Goyette is of interest to them. And Sean Hutchian on Twitter said last night, per sources heading into the NHL draft, Boston Bruins have followed two players closely who have New England ties. Of course they do. Center David Goyette of the OHL's Sudbury Wolves played his 15U hockey at South Kent School in Connecticut, ranked 13th among North American skaters in NHL Central Scouting. And then he said in an attached tweet, Bruins have also kept a close eye on center Brian Green of the USHL's Green Bay Gamblers, played 15U and 16U in South Kent, Connecticut School, ranked 46th of North American skaters by NHL Central Scouting. He is committed to Boston University. So, yep, a couple names to watch out for. Both centers, though, so that's a good thing. They're targeting centers. Mm-hmm. Other guys, if they were to go for the wing, I'd look at Devin Kaplan, maybe Rigo Lorenz, Julian Lutz, Adam Sikora, and Yanni Nyman. And another guy that just feels like a Bruins prospect, Ben McDonald from Nobles and Greeno. He just screams Bruins draft pick. He's going to Harvard in the fall of 2023. If he's available at 91, I could absolutely see them taking him. So
they'll take him at 54.
To look out for. I think I know the answer to this, but if the Bruins are drafting wherever they're drafting first, you want a center, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Too many question marks. Don't have enough, in that cupboard when it comes to, NHL ready prospects. Like you got to restock that now. So if there's a ton of them, like you've labeled here in the draft, then go out and get at least one or two of them early on and then do whatever you want afterwards. I don't care, but center is the priority.
Absolutely. I agree. Very excited for tomorrow. We'll see what they do. Mm-hmm. But on to the mock draft. I'm going to try not and ramble too long here as I've done in the past. I am sticking with Shane Wright at number 1. I think it just makes a lot of sense. It's a safe pick. Some might brand it. But I think Shane Wright, he's got some interesting comments in the past that people seem to kind of let fly under the radar. He kind of sees like people doubting him, whatever. He's like, yeah, I'm going to prove him like the best player in the draft pretty much. So I would like that if I'm Montreal. He's from Canada, played for the Kingston Frontenacs. Fans were showing up to games with Montreal Canadiens. Shane Wright mocked up jerseys.
Does he speak French Canadian? I was going to say that's the Montreal build compared to the Bruins.
Have some familiarity with
it.
But I'm going with Shane Wright. It sounds like it could be Slavkovsky, Wright, or Cooley. With Cooley being the more outside shot. I'm going Wright, though. I think this is all just going to be smoke in the end, and they're going to go with Shane Wright tomorrow night. Unintentional rhyme. Shane Wright's my guy. I think he's at the very least a very good second-line center in the NHL, if not a first-line center, and he could provide them a nice tandem with him and Nick Suzuki for many years to come. So I'm sticking with Shane Wright at number 1, going Yuri Slavkovsky at 2 to the Devils. We've talked about him and the Devils for a while now. Just makes too much sense. It'd be crazy to pass on him. Putting that big presence on the wing for Jack Hughes, Alexander Holtz, or whoever on the right. could be a really dominant tandem for a first line for them for a long time. Slavkovsky's a beast. His stock is rising for a reason. He's an absolute monster, and I think he's only going to get better. I think this is a guy that can score 35, 40 goals a season at his best. Now ranked number 1 most recently by Bob McKenzie, and his big draft ranking surprised a lot of people. So he could go to the Canadiens. We'll see. I think this is the most likely pick to be traded. The Devils have expressed willingness to do that in the past. I don't think they will, but if there is one to be traded, I'd say it's number 2 or number 7, which is owned by Ottawa. They've made it known they will be willing to trade that pick for the right player. Could be Alex DeBrincat, because I think more likely than not, we see Alex DeBrincat on a new team by the end of the draft. So that'll be interesting to watch. Logan Cooley at 3, thought of by most as the most dynamic player in the draft from what I've seen. I would agree. Super skilled, modern day, like dynamic forward. Going to Minnesota, he spurned Notre Dame, which I like because I'm not a huge Notre Dame guy. He's committed to Minnesota now. He's going to be a stud. He's not the biggest guy, but he's pretty shifty, pretty skilled, good vision, hockey IQ, all that good stuff you want from a top line center. I think he can be that. He can play a little bit of wing as well. I think Arizona will like that. They have so many picks. I don't think you can pass up the potentially the most dynamic player in the draft at 3 if he's on the board. So I think that'd be a very good pick. Kind of similar to me, ironically enough, to Clayton Keller, I think, in Arizona. So I see some similarities there. But I saw someone compare him to Patrick Kane once. I guess there's something there,
That's
but
steep.
That's a big comparison. Logan Cooley is a great player. I think he'll be one and done at Minnesota and head to Arizona right after that. So exciting player, potentially the most dynamic player, could end up being the best player in this draft very well. So we'll see what happens there. Seattle Kraken make a big splash by drafting the guy I think most of us expect them to draft in Simon Nemec. So I saw something that their like head scout or something practically is around his Slovakian team more so than Nemec is. Jokingly, apparently they really, really, really like him. They got Matty Beniers last year as their potential number 1 center of the future. Probably, I think Beniers is going to be awesome. Why not try and get your franchise defenseman here with Simon Nemec? He's a great player, fits the modern day mold of top puck moving defenseman in the league. Very good puck mover, put up pretty historically great production in Slovakia for a kid his age. He's a really good player, really smooth, fluid in everything he does. I think this would be a slam dunk pick for the Kraken, but they could surprise some people and go David Jiricek and go for the other top right-handed defenseman. But I'm going with Nemec. I think they will take Nemec. This is the one I feel the most comfortable about in the top 4. I think it will be Nemec if he's on the board. Carter Gauthier, future BC Eagle at 5. Unfortunately, going to the Philadelphia Flyers. I think they'll go with him or Jiricek. It's really hard to say. Sure, everybody's like, oh, he's this big, powerful Jiricek is this big, powerful defenseman. They could use him on the right side down the road. I don't know, man. They just locked up Ristolainen. They have Ryan Ellis hopefully coming back. Ronnie Attard. They have some basis there. They're starting to build something. Jiricek would obviously be a huge piece, but I don't know. I go with them taking a guy that can soften the blow eventually of losing Claude Giroux. I don't know if he's ever going to go back. There's some people out there believe he could just go back to Philly. I don't think he would. That would be pretty weird. Why not just try and win a Stanley Cup? Why not maybe come to the Bruins? That would be cool. Maybe just be like, that was a prank last year, but not wanting to go. He didn't want to go to Colorado either.
I wanted to be here the whole time. Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to go to Florida anymore. I'm good. Let's go to Boston or Colorado and try and do some shit. Carter Gauthier, very excited to watch him as a BC fan this year. He's a stud rising up draft boards. He's a beast, 6'3", 200 pounds. He's a monster. He can play center and wing. I think the Flyers will take him or Jiricek, and I've gone back and forth, but I'm sticking with Gauthier here. But knowing my luck, it'll be Jiricek. So we'll see. Speaking of him, Columbus, I think that would be kind of crazy to pass on Jiricek here. I think it's awesome value at 6. He did have a brutal leg injury that hurt his stock a little bit this year, but he's a big defenseman, strong, powerful, huge, booming shot. I think he'd be a slam dunk for the Blue Jackets here who have multiple first-round picks. I think they'd be kind of crazy to pass on him, but I don't know. I think they could go with Joakim Kamel too. It's possible, and I have Joakim Kamel going 7th to the Ottawa Senators. One of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in the draft, would be really nice alongside guys like Shane Pinto, Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, whoever in the top echelon of Senators forwards. Add a scorer to that core. They passed on Fabian Lysell last year, which I think was kind of dumb because they drafted Tyler Boucher, who was a massive reach and just does not look good early on in his development. I think you remedy that by taking Joakim Kamel and potentially having a big-time scorer in the ranks for the Ottawa Senators for a while. So we'll see what they do there. I'm going Kamel, though. Could be Lekaramaki, too, the other top right shot sniper in the draft. Matthew Savoy, my favorite forward in the draft. Casey's my favorite overall player. He's a right shot defenseman. Matthew Savoy, blazing speed, tons of excitement to his game, really good hands and shooting ability, just an offensive dynamo. There's some question marks around his game, but nothing that really would scare me if I'm Detroit here. I think they could really add him to an exciting mix they've got being put together in Detroit. And Savoy could be a slam dunk pick here, but a lot of options with how the board would fall in this sense. Marco Kasper to the Sabres. I think Marco Kasper is another guy rising up draft boards, and I think the Sabres could absolutely take him here. Pretty skilled player, but known by a lot for his tenacity. Can play all three forward positions. I think it would be a really nice pick to start off their draft haul for the Sabres, as they have 3 first-round picks. Jonathan Lekaramaki to Anaheim at number 10. You got Trevor Zegras. You got Mason McTavish. Add a right shot scoring winger for them to score tons and tons of goals. I think Lekaramaki would be a slam dunk here for the Ducks, and add to an exciting mix they're also building as well up front. But the Sharks, that would disappoint them because Lekaramaki is a teammate of their top prospect, William Eklund. So I think they'd love to snag him at 11 if he's available. But in this case, he's not. I'm going with Kevin Korchinski. They need prospect depth on defense pretty badly, and Kevin Korchinski is another guy that's rising up draft boards this year. Really smooth puck-moving defenseman, had a really good season in Seattle. I think that'd be a solid pick. Frank Nazar, one of my favorite players in the draft. Love how he plays. He's a little undersized, but I think he's got a really good nose for the net. He plays hard and doesn't let that size bother him. I think there's a lot of interesting tools with Frank Nazar. He's going to Michigan, which will be a lot of fun to watch him there in a talented group, along with my boy Seamus Casey. Pavel Mintyukov at 13 to the Islanders. I think he could be a type of defenseman they need. He's very good in the power play, very good puck mover, offensive defenseman, can score quite a bit. I think this would be a nice pick for the Islanders and add a top left-handed defense prospect they need in their system. So I like Mintyukov there. Denton Mateychuk at 14 to the Jets. Mateychuk kind of fallen in the rankings more so than I thought. I think he's like 24th in Mackenzie's rankings, but I don't know. If I'm Winnipeg, I'm taking Denton Mateychuk without hesitation here. He's a great player. Another one of those defensemen, just really smooth skater, really smart, got some, really exciting traits offensively in particular. I think Winnipeg could really use a guy like him. They need defensive help long-term, and he's a really good player. I think he should go higher than his rank in Mackenzie's draft rankings. Oh boy. Am I going fast enough?
Yeah, you're doing good. Fine with me.
I need a break.
Yeah.
My goodness.
This is usually your time to shine, though, because I know nothing about the NHL draft. Not that I don't put effort in, but I don't put any, obviously look into any of these guys as much as you do. So this is usually the point in the show where I kind of just take a back seat and just kind of hang out.
I got to just make sure you're still with us.
Yep, I got you.
Yeah, maybe you'll get some insight on Carter Gauthier if you come to any Merrimack BC games this year with me. So maybe we'll go to that game on November 4th.
It's the day after my birthday.
It is. That
might complicate things. I don't know what we.
Yeah,
maybe.
Maybe we'll see. A long time from now.
Yes, that's true.
Liam Ogren to the Canucks at 15. I like Liam Ogren a lot. Another guy that's I feel like risen up draft boards steadily throughout the season. Can play both wings from what I've seen. Just a fun player. I mean, they like their Swedes in Vancouver with Elias Pettersson in particular. I think adding another exciting forward, good speed to the mix, and Liam Ogren would be smart, but they got some options. I think they could easily go with the next guy who I have going 16th to the Sabres in Ryan Chesley. Especially now that they're looking to trade Tyler Myers. I don't think they really have a good, solid right shot defense prospect besides Jet Wu. I think Ryan Chesley I think the comparisons to Ryan McDonough, who was actually recently traded, we forgot about that. That trade was a little crazy, but
That's right.
nice salary dump for the Lightning and a great pickup for the Predators. So there's that. I thought my mic was just going to fall there. Yeah, that was an interesting trade, but they think they can get someone to Philip Myers, and Grant Mishmash was just kind of a throw-in. So, but he's a former second-round pick, so maybe he does something for them. Knowing the Lightning, they'll turn Grant Mishmash into a fourth liner on their team next year, and he'll score like
he'll be nasty.
the game-winning goal to send them to the Cup Finals again.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's going to happen probably. Not really, just a joke. Ryan Chesley to the Sabres. I think the Sabres with 3 picks can just go for who they feel is the best guy available every time if they want. Ryan Chesley, I think this is another team that could use some depth at right shot defense. Henry Jokiharju isn't super great. Rasmus Dahlin is a left shot defenseman playing right D, but we'll see how long that lasts. If they keep that going this year, I think they could use a guy like Chesley in their system. I think this is a guy that's probably a second pairing defenseman when he hits his potential. He's going to Minnesota as well. I think this would be a nice, safe, solid pick for the Sabres. I don't know how to say this guy's name. Nobody really does, it seems.
That's surprising because you usually hit these out of the park, and I'm the one struggling with how to pronounce guys' names.
I think it's Leon Bixel. I think that's what it is. I don't know. I don't think anybody really does. I've heard so many different pronunciations, but he's a big, ginormous defender. He's like 6'5". He's got some good skating ability for a big guy. Just seems like a Nashville Predators defenseman to me. They like their big, tough guys on defense. They like Borowiecki, Ekholm, Jeremy Lozon. Now they gave him 4 years for some reason.
Talked about that before, how weird of a trade or weird of a signing that was.
Yeah, I don't know. Big Sell makes a lot of sense for the Predators here, but that's a team I think could still use some help in the prospect core at the forward position. So we'll see. Hard to get a read on the Predators. I think this could be a surprise spot. We see Brad Lambert go, or Ivan Miroshnichenko, or Danil Yurov. Miroshnichenko and Danil Yurov status is in question due to being Russian prospects, and Miroshnichenko was diagnosed in the winter with Hodgkin's lymphoma that he is rebounding well from. So once considered a top 5, top 10 talent, probably still by some people, is falling in the draft boards a little bit. So we'll see where Miroshnichenko goes. He's a fantastic player, though. Whoever gets him is very lucky. If they can turn him into the star that he can potentially be in a big time scorer, they're going to be very fortunate because he is a stud. Nathan Gaucher to the Dallas Stars. This is another team I don't know what they're going to do. I think they can go either way, but Gaucher kind of seems like he's trending up to from once probably going late first round to maybe mid first round. I think Dallas could take a shot at the big Canadian center. He's like 6'3", over 200 pounds, I believe. Scored 31 goals in the QMJHL this year. Pretty good player, honestly. Big, good size, defensively responsible from what I've read about him. Seems like a good 3-zone center, potentially at the NHL level, maybe a second, third line center. But, you're hoping for second line billing at that regard, picking 18th overall. But I think this would be a safe pick for the Stars. Another big center. Some might be surprised to see him at 19. Connor Geekie. There's a lot to like about Connor Geekie, but there's a lot to be concerned about with his skating as a bigger guy. There's some legitimate concerns about his skating ability. So he's kind of fallen down. Once considered a probably top 10 lock pick in the draft. Could go in the top 10 still, but I think he'll go anywhere around like the 13 to 20 range in my mind. But if you can, get the skating figured out and, he reaches his potential, Connor Geekie could be a beast. So yeah, there's that. I think Minnesota could take a shot on him here. They got multiple first round picks. They got a lot of center depth in Minnesota, but it might just be kind of like a best player available thing. If they feel like Geekie could be that guy, I could absolutely see them taking him, but kind of hard to pin what Minnesota will do here. The Capitals, a team that's not super used to picking in the first round all the time. Danil Yurov just makes too much sense here. He's hard to get a read on because he's so good, but in Russia, they don't, always give young players a ton of ice time. He played very little for Metalurg Magnitogorsk this year. Listening to Chris Peters talk about him on his podcast in the past, Talking Hockey Sense, he had very minimal playing time, but is thought of by some as a top 10 player in this class. Good physically, can score, has a good nose for the net. A lot to like about Danil Yurov. I think the Capitals could very well take a chance on him here, or Miroshnichenko, one of the Russian guys. We know they have a lot of Russian guys in the mix in Washington already. Maybe they take a chance on Danil Yurov and have it pay off because he's got some really nice potential. Another team that's not used to picking in the first round very often is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yuri Kulich is the pick here for me. I think Kulich is a really interesting player. Could go early second round, could go as high as like pick 20 to me, maybe a little higher. Really exciting shooter, got a really good shot. A lot of people like that about him the most. I think he just makes a lot of sense. A guy that can score goals and score exciting goals and has a really good shot, I think makes a lot of sense as a Pittsburgh Penguins prospect to me. But this is a team I could go see going right shot defense, given the uncertainty of the future of Chris Letang and the fact that they don't have like a single good right shot defense prospect in their system. So maybe this is Seamus Casey. They reach a little bit on him. Maybe Ryan Chesley falls to them. Maybe they go with Matthias Havelid or Tristan Luneau. Who knows? But who knows? Lou knows. Get it? Yuri Kulich is the pick for me. That was a pretty good one. I think I've made worse puns.
Yeah. Yes, that's for sure.
I think it's a pretty safe bet.
Mm-hmm.
The Anaheim Ducks with the Bruins pick. 22 overall. I have them going Isaac Howard. Pretty awesome player. A little bit of concern on his size. I think there's some exciting scoring potential there, and I think they'd be very well served to take him here. Another guy that could complement Zegras or McTavish really nicely in the future on the wing. And I believe he's going to Minnesota as well. A lot of Minnesota kids in this draft, unsurprisingly so.
That team was stacked last year, so that's not a surprise.
Yeah, so we shall see. I think Isaac Howard would be a really nice pick for Anaheim here and kind of complete the trade tree a little more. With the Lindholm trade, Owen Pickering is the pick for me for St. Louis at 23. Owen Pickering, another bigger defenseman. I didn't like read a ton on Pickering. He just I saw a little bit about him. He didn't really excite me that much. So I don't know a ton about him, but he's regarded as probably like a late first round, mid first round pick. And I think St. Louis could use additional prospect depth at left D. So I gave them to Owen Pickering. Not a huge reason for it outside of that. Jimmy Snuggerud, a guy that some think could go as high as top 10, but I mean, wherever he goes, he's a really good shooter. He's another guy I think that's bound for Minnesota. Which is just funny. There's just so many of them. I think Isaac Howard might actually not be Minnesota. Let me check. Snuggerud, really good shooter on the right wing. Isaac Howard's going to Minnesota Duluth. So yeah, there's an easy mix up there. Snuggerud is, I'm almost positive, going to Minnesota. And yeah, he's a good player. Guy's got some probably decent scoring upside once he hits the NHL. He's going to Minnesota. So I think it's just another nice pick for Minnesota. I think they probably like to grab a defenseman, but they could be in a spot with two picks where they could just go best player available. So we'll see what happens there for Minnesota, but they're in an interesting spot now after the Fiala trade. Someone see this as a reach for the Maple Leafs at 25, but Calle Odelius just feels like a Maple Leaf to me. They like their Swedish defenseman. They're probably going to lose one, Rasmus Sandin, which will be funny because Rasmus Sandin will make that hurt because he's really good, but they're probably going to not be able to retain him potentially as an RFA. Could get offer sheeted. I like Calle Odelius for them, another Swedish defenseman, good puck mover, smooth skater, just feels like a Maple Leaf to me. I've had him penciled in there for months and I'm not changing it. I'm going with that. Hopefully it lands and I look like a smart guy for it.
Sticking to your guns.
Sticking to my guns. One of the cooler names in the draft to the Montreal Canadiens via the Calgary pick at 26, and is Rutger McGroarty, bound for Michigan.
Okay.
Big guy, can score goals. That's really the billing on him for me. I think he's a guy that will be a big net front presence, score a lot of greasy goals, and potentially score a lot of them in the NHL. I like Rutger McGroarty. I like his name. Cool, but I hope he doesn't go to the Canadiens. I hope I'm wrong here. Reed Schaefer put on a good show in the WHL playoffs, and I think it's going to get him into the first round more likely than not. Really high-end scoring ability on the left wing for the Seattle Thunderbirds this year, who won the WHL championship. I think he's going to make his way into the first round more likely than not. Somewhat of a bold prediction, but I think Arizona could use any scoring help for the future. So Logan Cooley at the top, Reed Schaefer here. It's a pretty good start. And they already got Dylan Gunther, who's just tore up the WHL this year with the Edmonton Oil Kings. No, not the WHL. They're in the OHL, I think. But they also won their respective championship. Wait, what? Maybe I'm mixing it up. Edmonton beat Seattle. Sorry. I thought Seattle won the WHL championship, but Edmonton did.
You just pissed so many listeners off not getting that
yeah,
right.
I'm sorry, Seattle Thunderbirds fans. God damn it.
God damn it, kid. What the hell?
We're goofing on Matt Barzal earlier. He used to play for the Seattle Thunderbirds. Now we're doing this. I'm sorry. Damn it, we're gonna lose
Rough
all our
day.
Seattle listeners.
Uh-huh.
The Buffalo Sabres, another team with multiple picks. This is where Ivan Miroshnichenko's drop stops, and I really don't want him to go to the Sabres because if everything hopefully goes well with the cancer doesn't become a problem, he's going to be a really good NHL player. I think really, really good. Has a really lethal shot, really big time scoring potential. Him falling to the Sabres with the Florida pick at 28 would be a gold mine. I think they'd be crazy with 3 first-round picks to pass on him if he's available here. So yeah, that's a no-brainer to me. But at the same time, there's a lot of uncertainty with these Russian prospects, so we could see some pretty big slides for not even just Yurov and Miroshnichenko, but other Russian prospects this year and potentially in the future. So we'll see what happens there. It's really hard to pin where they're going to go this year. Brad Lambert, the most polarizing player in the class. Once thought of as a top 3 pick. I think easily the best skater in the draft. A lot of, exciting offensive potential, but there's some doubt, can he create scoring chances very well for himself on the inside areas of the ice, or if he's more of a perimeter guy with that speed. There's a lot of question marks around Brad Lambert, but if I'm the Oilers, I don't think they're a team with a very specific need. I'm going with a guy, Brad Lambert, that could be a monster playing with Connor McDavid in the future, early on Draisaitl. The speed, the skill, I think his game can be more, be built out a little bit more. I think Edmonton should absolutely take a gamble at 29 here if he's available there. If Brad Lambert is molded the right way, he will be a star in the NHL. I think some team could look very, very smart for taking a gamble on him, probably late in the first round at this point. He could fall to the second round, but I kind of doubt it in Brad Lambert here. I think Edmonton should do it. Oilers fans, I know there's probably a lot of them because I look at the audience demographic, might think I'm an idiot, might not want Brad Lambert, might not want that uncertainty. But look, if you get him going, I mean, he could be a monster with McDavid or Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Ryan McLeod, whoever ends up being in the mix there by the time he's ready, because it's probably going to take a few years. But I don't know, man. I like the idea of Edmonton making a fun pick here and potentially looking like geniuses for it with Brad Lambert, the most polarizing player in the draft this year. Noah Ostlund to the Jets, which hopefully will be the Bruins pick by this time or a few hours in the future, like 28 hours in the future to the Bruins. Noah Ostlund, another guy, could go in the second round, but boosted his stock, I think, at the World Championships. I think I'm mixing him up with Liam Ogren, but a guy a lot of people seem to like. Just seems like a first rounder type of guy to me, fringe second rounder maybe. But I think Winnipeg drafts a defenseman, Denton Mateychuk, then they go for a forward in Ostlund. I think it would make sense here. Not a whole, I don't know a ton about Ostlund, so I'm not going to act like I do. So, but he seems like a first rounder. There's some interesting qualities to his game, it seems, but I don't know. I'm just putting him there. Mock drafts are a crapshoot. Let's be honest. I'm not going to have this.
If the NFL draft that you put out, the mock draft put out, was anything to go off of.
Yeah, I got a couple picks in that right, just at the wrong spot.
Yeah.
I had Trevor Penning correct, but he ended up going like three picks later or something like that.
Yep.
I think another one I had similar situation to that too, but I'm going Noah Ostlund. I don't really know what Winnipeg's going to do here. Just being honest with you. Tampa Bay, another team that's not always picking in the first round too. I have them going with one of my favorite players in the draft, and Matthias Havlid. I am hoping that the Bruins could potentially land him at 54. I love Havlid. He's another. There's so many of them this year. He's one of my favorites to watch outside of Casey. Super smooth, really solid passer. I like his upside as a potential second pairing defenseman on this team someday if the Bruins were to land him. But for Tampa Bay, I think they could afford to build up their blue line in the prospect core. And a little bit off the board, but I think Matthias Havlid could be an interesting way to do that. Have a big Swedish mentor in Victor Hedman, potential defense partner.
So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the planet. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Matthias Havlid a lot. I've been reading about him over the past few months, and I think he's awesome. I think he's super shifty and really good skater and fits the modern mold of the puck moving defenseman. I like him a lot. not the biggest guy, but I think, a guy that's got an NHL future ahead of him. I think there's some appealing qualities there. And the last pick of the first round, the last team that has multiple picks in the first round, and hopefully we'll trade this one to the Bruins, the Arizona Coyotes. I have them taking Tristan Luneau, who I was talking about earlier. Guy whose stock has fluctuated a little bit throughout the season. I think you draft a couple forwards. Maybe you go for a defenseman. Maybe it's not Luneau here. I think Arizona will be well served to dip into the defensive pool of the draft this year at some point in the first round if they were to keep all three firsts. So Tristan Luneau is a safe pick here. Adds another right shot defenseman to the prospect pool outside of Victor Soderstrom and Cam Cratty. So we'll see what happens there. But Arizona could just be like, we're going best player available every time. And that could be three forwards. One thing about the draft this year, too, is there's not going to be a goalie in the first round. Probably won't see a goalie till the late second round, maybe early. They like Topias Leinonen or Tyler Brennan enough, but it looks like we're not getting a first round goalie this year. So if anybody was expecting that, you shouldn't be, because there's more likely than not going to be a first round selection at goalie. Hopefully the Bruins get one of those late first round picks and make me happy, because that would show that they're aggressive about restocking the prospect pool. But that's my first round mock that I'll probably get like 6 picks correct at max, probably less. So mock drafts are fun, but they're also stupid and they're a crapshoot. But I like to do them every year because it's just in my nature. So I'm going to do it, and I did it. So I'll tweet this out before the draft tomorrow for anybody who hasn't, listened and heard it. But yeah, that's my first round mock, and I'm, looking forward to seeing how it all pans out. So
the Russia aspect is really, not to keep harping on that, but that's just listening to you talk about it was kind of an interesting thing just to see how far, because again, it's not like these guys are going to fall because of their skill. Like they're going to fall because of their crapshoot situation over in Russia, like which sucks, but it's interesting to see, like you said, how far some of these guys that have a ton of skill, like you mentioned, are going to get ultimately screwed over because of that.
Yeah, the thing with Yurov, like I mentioned too, like it's a really hard guy to get a read on too, because he got such little playing time in Russia this year, but the tools are there. There's reason to believe he can be a really good player. The good thing is him and Miroshnichenko made it safely to Montreal.
Well, that's good.
The draft. So I don't know where they were before then, what they were doing, but they're there. So that's good. That's a good sign. Hopefully for Miroshnichenko too, his, health stays in a good state and he can, be the NHL player he is projected to be, because it's a pretty exciting one. So we'll see. It's a very crazy situation over in Russia. So it's going to affect those guys a lot, and that's really sad.
Yep.
So that's just how it is, unfortunately, though. Speaking of Russians, one Russian in the NHL requested a trade recently, and that was Alexander Georgiev of the New York Rangers. Guy is not going to start over Igor Shesterkin. He's got a $2.65 million qualifying offer if, they were to choose to do that. Had that whole thing with D'Angelo when he was there, when he punched D'Angelo in the face. The guy that wants out. He wants to be a starter, and that's not going to happen with the Rangers. So I don't blame him for requesting a trade. The Rangers got a couple guys now, or 3 guys, because they still have Vitaly Kravtsov, who they signed for a year just to have control to trade him. And the third guy, a guy I wanted for the Bruins in his draft here quite a bit when they were searching for right wing depth in the prospect pool, is Julien Gauthier, formerly of the Hurricanes. Gauthier and Georgiev both requested trades. So I got 3 guys with trade requests in the Rangers system now. So we'll see what happens with those. I saw that, I think this was before I brought this up, before the show I brought this up, that Edmonton potentially is going to make a run at Georgiev. I don't know about Gauthier. We'll see what happens, though. Mike Grier is named GM of the San Jose Sharks. Guy with some Boston ties. He's the first black GM in NHL history.
They wanted there.
Yeah, absolutely. And they wanted a former NHL player. They wanted someone that's been around the league. Ray Whitney was also in the mix. But they go with Mike Grier here. Really interested to see how he can figure things out in San Jose, because they got a lot of big contracts. The team is not good. So he's got quite a bit of work ahead of him. So I'm really interested to see how he sorts that all out and starts his career as an NHL GM. So, yeah, the Sharks have their GM. They still don't have their coach. They've fired a bunch of coaches this past week. So I think ideally going to the draft, they'd like to sort that out, but they don't have a lot of time. So we'll see what they do for the coaching search and how Mike Grier wants to direct that team going forward. Should be pretty interesting. The Bruins re-signed Nick Wolf from formerly Minnesota Duluth, the ginormous AHL defenseman, about like 6'5", and Kyle Keyser to 1-year deals. good to shore up that goaltending depth because they're probably going to lose Grosnick and Booth this offseason. So they need goaltending depth. They signed Brendan Bussey from Western Michigan a few months ago, the right-handed catcher. Now they have Keyser, so they're shoring up the goaltending depth in the minors there. Nick Wolf just adds a big body on the back end, so I like that. But at the same time, they lose a couple. Providence Bruins defensemen Blake Hillman and Aaron Ness both leave. Hillman's going to Hartford to join the Rangers organization, and Aaron Ness is going back to Hershey, where he used to play, to go to the Capitals organization. He's a big-time leader there. They like him a lot. So the Bruins lose a couple defensemen. They keep one, and they keep a goalie around that they've had for a little while around in the AHL. So just some quick news there. And like we clued out earlier, there's a pretty crazy situation going on. Supposedly, it's a lot of different conflicting reports with Kirill Kaprizov, Ivan Fedotov, who was looking to be the backup goalie of the Flyers. And it doesn't look like that's happening anymore.
No, with this, yeah.
He was like evading the Russian army. There's like fake military IDs going around that Kaprizov was apparently linked to, being sold to players. This is per Andrew Zadarnowski, per Sport Express. So there's one report. Michael Russo of the Wild Beat in Minnesota for The Athletic saying regarding reports that Kirill Kaprizov, I don't know why I was saying Kaprizov, it's one of those names I can't say one pronunciation of. Yep. Regarding reports that Kirill Kaprizov is wanted in Russia for allegedly buying a military ID in 2017 and has returned to the United States, a hashtag MNWild source says he is not in the U.S. Obviously, this is a complicated story, and I'm working to see if there's merit. And we have another one, Eugene Kolichev, who I think his like Twitter bio was something about being like the former commissioner of a Ukrainian hockey league. Yeah, he's former GM of the Ukrainian hockey league, reporting this. That, let me just go back to the screen here. Breaking, Kirill hashtag Kaprizov will serve in the airborne forces if he is sent to the Russian army. He had a reprieve until June 30th. So potential budding NHL superstar will not be an NHL superstar any longer if this comes to fruition. Crazy situation. Nobody knows exactly what's going on. It seems absolutely bonkers. Outside of the reports, we're not really going to speculate much because that would be dumb. So
don't really want to touch that. Absolutely.
Nope. But yeah, just putting it out there for anybody who hasn't kept up with it. Krejci and Kruger in the news. Didn't really expect that today, but they are. David Krejci recently spoke to Don Sweeney, which is good to hear. There's a lot coming out from the media with Sweeney and Neely arriving at the draft in Montreal. So we'll run through these real quick. I wasn't going to link all these tweets because there's so many. Starting with Krejci, Sweeney said, I've been in touch with David and his team. He spent a lot of time with his family deciding what he'd like to do. Conversations have gone well. It's just a matter of what David decides ultimately and if we're going to be the place that he chooses. I don't know if there's anybody out there thinking this, but the place he chooses doesn't mean he's thinking of another NHL team. He's thinking
it's
of
the
Boston
Bruins or
the
bust.
Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Like,
I think this is pretty clear, cut and dry. Like, I don't think there should be any. I'm with you. No other speculation there of anything else.
I hope not, but you never freaking know. Torrey Krug is on Frank Saravalli's trade board, which I did not expect to see, but I mean, he's got a big contract for the next 5 years. They're looking to switch things up a little bit, and Torrey Krug might be part of that switch up. Alex DeBrincat at the number 1 of that list, JT Miller rising up to number 2. Doesn't sound like contract talks are going well, so we'll see if JT Miller's traded on draft night. That'd be pretty crazy.
Be interesting, yeah.
Blake Wheeler is number 3 on that list. Jacob Chikrin could be moved by the end of the draft. Tarasenko's trade request apparently still stands, so maybe they trade Tarasenko. He's got 1 more year left at $7.5 million. Number 2 overall pick, like I said earlier, likely most to move in the top 10. Devils could easily do it. Maybe not easily, but we'll see. Yes, Puljujärvi, he's not going to be an Oiler next season. It's just a matter of when he moves. John Gibson, Tyson Barrie, Jeff Petrie, Georgiev, Tony DeAngelo's RFA rights, and Torrey Krug at 13. So we'll see if Torrey Krug is moved, I imagine, even though it's a 5-year term. Unless they were to take a decent salary back, they'd have to retain a little bit of money on Torrey Krug there, but maybe a team like Detroit that was speculated to be willing to take him on when he was a free agent could get the Michigan boy back.
I was just going to say hometown, yeah.
Yeah, I think they have plenty of cap space to accommodate that as well, especially with Danny DeKaiser's terrible contract off the books, and plenty to work with. Recent trade history, Detroit recently acquired Jake Wallman and Oscar Sundqvist at the trade deadline from St. Louis. So they've got some familiarity recently. So I'm looking at Detroit there, but would be interesting to see Torrey Krug moved. For anybody hoping he's coming back to Boston, I just don't think that's going to happen. I really, really don't. For obvious reasons, I'm sure people can guess. Not going to run through the rest of the list, but it was interesting to see Jesper Bratt there. Had a really good season with New Jersey. I think they'd love to keep him in their top 6, but doesn't sound like contract talks have really progressed. So I wonder if someone offer sheets Jesper Bratt. I wonder if he gets traded because I think they could get a lot for him. But I think New Jersey is hoping that Bratt will stay around because he has turned into a very good player for them. So we'll see what happens there. Like I said, not going to run through the whole list, but interesting to see Krug there. Interesting to see Krejci's name in the news. Some additional stuff. And Sweeney was asked about DeBrusk's trade request. Said that's accurate. He rescinded his trade request, and we're very happy that Jake has turned into a corner and how he feels about the Boston Bruins and wants to be with us. He had a hell of a second part of the year. He deserves a lot of credit for his production he put forth. He's looking forward to being back if there's opportunities to improve the team. Jake knows that as well. Lots to continue to look at, but we're happy that he's in a good place. Does that change up your thoughts on DeBrusk at all? I'm curious.
No, I was going to make the joke. I was going to say they left out the part of he texted me right after I wrongfully fired Bruce Cassidy. We had a good laugh about it. That, hey, now that he's gone, I'm going to stick around and hang out for a little bit. Like, no, again, it's just like comes off as wussy and like I got what I wanted, even though like you hope he doesn't do this, but like I think we're in the same boat that like we could very easily see DeBrusk again have the 1 month stretch or 1 week stretch where he's phenomenal and then disappears for the next 2. Like it's the type of player he is, in my opinion. And I don't think anything's going to change that.
Damn it.
Did your microphone finally go down?
I had a feeling this is going to happen today. I was going to knock over the microphone if there was an episode. It was going to happen. Jeez. All right.
All good now.
It works. So
that's good.
Just tune this a little bit. Yeah, we're good. We're back. We're back in business. I just smoked that thing though. Right in the middle of your discussion there, so I'm sorry, but additional media stuff with them being Sweeney and Neely. Bruins president Cam Neely on Patrice Bergeron. He went through the elbow procedure for a reason, I think, as we speculated as well, not just to feel better in the offseason. I'm starting to feel a little more confident that he's leaning in the direction we want him to lean in. That's good, but not as like firm of an answer I would have hoped to hear. But this is not to dispute like Joe McDonald's report. I think it was legitimate, but it seems like there's still work to do on the Bergeron front, sorting out probably bonuses and incentives, which will be heavily involved in that deal. So
you got to think
that's a big part of it. Don Sweeney on Patrice Bergeron says, my conversations with Patrice have gone well. His recovery has gone well. We're excited that he's considering playing and moving forward with what we think is a positive mindset. So works for me. Kind of fluff, really, though.
Typical Don Sweeney.
Super excited about, but it's positive momentum from what the sound of it is to me. NHL Bruins president Cam Neely on contract extension negotiations with David Pastrnak. This one is weird to me. He says, I believe Don's meeting with his agent here in Montreal. I feel very positive about it. What do you mean you believe?
You believe, yeah. What do you think he would lie to you about? Yeah, I met with Pasta's agent today and it went well. Like, why would he lie?
But like, believe. Like, how do you?
You don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know if your GM met with
or is going to meet by the end of the month, because that's what it sounds like from.
We touched base with him. We'll get back to it a little bit. Like we knocked it out. I called him for 5 seconds while I was on my lunch break, and we talked. That was it. Okay. Like
come on.
Again,
dude.
it feeds into the what the fuck is this off season? Like this just again with the uncertainty. Now you can't even get on the same page if your GM and your team president have met where the GM has met with the player's agent. Like you can't know that or you don't know that it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's really it. Like I'm just looking to see if there's any additional like interesting quotes from the article they have attached. I'm scrolling up the Twitter feed. Nothing really.
Nope.
nothing like super
I can tell
imperative.
you said it's probably all just a bunch of fluff and like
Yeah.
saying what they think the fans want to hear, but in reality, it's just more of the same. Like, shut up and do something productive.
Yeah, please. There is the note that like they have to replace Kevin Dean. Joe Sacco, I wonder if he could be in the mix for the San Jose job. Wouldn't be surprised. They've been talking about with skills coach Kim Brandvold, Chris Kelly, Sacco, and Bob Asenza about their potential returns. So they got to figure that out. But yeah, just some interesting media availability from Sweeney and Neely, and some additional notes before we segue to Red Sox. Fabian Lysell will, sadly, for anyone attending development camp, he will not be at development camp because he'll be preparing for the postponed World Juniors that they'll be finishing up in August with Team Sweden. They have a really fun team this year. Looking forward to watching them. Mason Lowry will also not be at Bruins development camp because he had knee surgery recently. So, yeah, hopefully everything goes well for him and he can play good at Ohio State and sign in the spring with the Bruins. But any final Bruins thoughts or NHL drafts, things you're hoping the Bruins do these next upcoming days leading up to free agency before we segue to some quick Red Sox things?
Nothing much that we haven't already touched on. Like, I think the biggest thing that you and I are in agreement on is that, if you can get to the first round, that would be great. And again, I think it just shows that you're being proactive and trying to not right a wrong, because there really weren't any wrongs done, but like, you know what I mean? Like, try to, again, just do something to maybe get the fans back on your side. I think getting into the first round and, actually hitting one of these draft picks, if you can get it, would be nice. But of course, we'll have to kind of wait and see on that with the track record and everything of Don Sweeney. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully they do something to, get you a little bit more excited than maybe we are right now at how this offseason might go about.
Yeah. And one final thing I'll give my prediction for pick 54. For me, just more so gut feeling than anything, it's going to be Danny Zilkin from the OHL or Ryan Green, who's going to BU. Ryan Green for reasons we've mentioned, but I do think that we'll go with the center. But if I were to pick one, I'm going Ryan Green. I think he is the pick at 54 if I had to give one. So that's what I'm expecting. But
all right,
knowing that they'll draft a left winger or something,
maybe a defenseman. Or
like
you said that you said a goalie wasn't going to go within obviously the first round, but that they'll go with a goalie in the second round for some reason.
Yeah,
to do something really stupid. Yeah, trade the they'll pull a Patriots and trade the pick for future considerations. Like,
I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm a little apprehensive about things, though.
Yep. How can you not be, though, with the track record?
Hoping they sell high on Jake DeBrusk so I don't have to worry about Jake dogging it again or whatever. So I would like to see them sell high and make a good trade and maybe trade Mike Riley, because you can't have all these defensemen going into next year. You got to trade one of them at least. We'll see what happens, but it's draft week and then free agency. Very exciting times. But on to Red Sox, because it's a big night for the Red Sox tonight.
It is.
A certain prospect that is tearing it up over the past couple of years.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to get to how he got here, though, first. The Red Sox, like I say, some quick thoughts on them. Finally made a move, or a couple moves, obviously, what you alluded to, bringing up said top prospect that we'll get to in a second. A couple moves you can finally get behind. They finally, after just this month really, of just pure crap, they DFA Hansel Robles last night. The guy I have coined the pitching equivalent of Jackie Bradley Jr. because he has one good month. Everyone loses their minds over it. And then he goes back to being Hansel Robles and pointing out 500-foot home runs that he thinks are pop-ups and just, not being able to pitch. This is some Red Sox stats on Twitter last night as Robles was imploding again. He said, quote, Robles has been a disaster since the end of April. 14 2/3 innings pitched, 21 hits, 16 earned runs, which is insane for a month. 11 strikeouts, 4 home runs allowed. He's allowed 5 all season, so 4 of them came in the month of June. An OPS over 1 and an ERA over 10, and FIP, which I can't remember what FIP is. It's some advanced stat, over 7, which just not good, and counting. Wonder if tonight is the end. And of course, I had on Twitter last night, quote, the narrator, that tonight was the end of Hansel Robles. He was DFA'd after the ball game last night, finishes his Red Sox season with 26 games pitched, 1-3, a 5.84 ERA and 24 2/3, 16 earned runs, 5 home runs allowed, 21 Ks, 14 walks, and an opponent average of 260. Hansel Robles turned out to be the crap relief pitcher that I thought he was when they got him. Shocker how that came to be. I think Maz, I was looking at Twitter earlier, basically had the same thing. He goes, Hansel Robles turned out to be the guy that he was when the Red Sox got him last year in his Red Sox tenure. Pretty average pitcher, maybe below average to say the least. But as you alluded to, with Hansel Robles being DFA, there is opportunity for a star in the making to be given his chance, and that's what's going to happen tonight. Brian Bayo, Red Sox, I believe, number 1 pitching prospect. I think he's number 3 in the organization. He will make his major league debut tonight against Tampa Bay Rays, a guy that I think it was Red Sox Stats had it on Twitter as well. Might have been Boston Strong. He started the season in Double-A and advanced to the major leagues in just 4 months, which is insane. Had a great season so far in the minors, 15 games between Portland and Worcester, 14 starts, 10-4 with a 2.33 ERA, 114 to 33 strikeout to walk ratio in those 15 games, 85 innings pitched, 22 earned runs, and 6 home runs allowed. He's been successful pretty much everywhere he's been this season. 6-2 in Worcester, 4-2 in Portland in 6 games. So great there. Joined a long list of Red Sox pitchers to make their debut before the age of 23. Some more notable ones over the last couple of seasons. Of course, Darwinson Hernandez was the last one in 2019. They were 1 for 2 when it came to pitchers in 2015. Henry Owens, of course, he's a guy that you want to forget that name. But Eduardo Rodriguez made his debut that year as well. He was a pretty good pitcher for the Red Sox over the years. Some other notable names: Clay Buchholz in 2007, John Lester in 2006, Justin Masterson in 2008, Junichi Tozawa in 2009, and Felix Dubron in 2010. I'll throw Alan Webster's name in there as well because he was another guy that was.
I was so hyped about Alan Webster.
Everybody was. He was one of the big pieces of that giant Dodgers trade that year, way back when, and he just was another Henry Owens type that didn't really pan out in the end.
Felix Dubron too. Oh my God.
Felix Dubron was a head case. He was a guy that would have one great start and then pitch horrible the next, and then throw a no-hitter, close to a no-hitter, and the next start, it's like he was you couldn't figure out what he was.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know what I figured out?
What'd you figure out?
Figured out is that FIP is fielding independent pitching.
Oh, okay. Again,
stupid stat.
Yeah, I talk about made up things when we talk about NBA contracts, made up baseball stats.
Weird one.
It's one of those, again, big advanced stats that people look into. So can't imagine. I don't know what the number is supposed to be, but I'm assuming it's supposed to be low. But an over 7 FIP is probably not good, which fits the bill for Hansel Robles. Back on Bayo though. It's just the kind of the scouting report. I took this from SoxProspects.com. He will feature a 4-seam fastball that sits around 95 to 98, primarily sits 97, 98, and can top out at 99. Work in progress is what they're calling it. Changeup, 87 to 89 miles per hour, a slider that sits at 84 to 87, and the occasional 2-seam fastball that sits at 93 to 96 miles per hour. You and I are in agreement, though, talking about this a little bit before we jumped on here. It doesn't really seem like there has been this much hype for a pitching prospect because, I mean, the Red Sox haven't really, let's be honest, like pitchers are not the guys they tend to develop all that well. There's been a couple of guys, like I said, Lester, Buchholz had his moments, Erod. But Bayo's a guy that I've seen some people kind of think is going to be maybe the next Pedro Martinez. There's a lot of similarities there, I've heard. That obviously gets people hyped up. They said, I saw it on Twitter last night, the pressure's already on him, that Nesson's putting on him, because as they were talking about him, they showed Pedro Martinez's retired number 45 out in the right field seat. So let's throw that pressure on the kid right away. But there is a lot to like about him. He's had a ton of success, like I said. To be able to go from Double-A to the majors in just 4 months is incredible. And obviously there's a lot to like. And I just like, I mean, I've had this discussion with my dad before. He's brought it up that, I feel like he feels like the Red Sox are the team that doesn't really give their young prospects, they don't really, a lot of that. His claim is a lot of other teams, you'll see like young guys get to the majors pretty quick. The Red Sox tend to wait on a lot of guys. Yeah. So I'm glad we've discussed it off air before that, he's a guy that we were looking forward to. I think you've asked me in the past if there was a chance that we'd see him this year. And I'm like, I don't know, because they have a ton of starters. They have plenty of options in their bullpen that they don't seem to want to get away from. So really, is there a spot for Bayo to make an appearance? They're going to do it tonight, which, like I said, is I like to see, because if he's ready, which they seem to think he is, and all the stats seem to back up, then why not give him a shot? You obviously have guys coming back from injury soon. So maybe this is kind of the one little, not tryout, but the showcase for him, I guess. And if he can be successful, which hopefully he can be, then they have a legitimate stud in the making.
Yeah, it's the developmental track for him has been pretty rapid over the past, few months or so, maybe like more so a year. It just feels like things have materialized really quick. He's had a pretty consistent deal of success over the past like maybe year and a half, 2 years. And to have this hype at 23 is pretty extreme. And, there's a guy I can think of more recently than some of the guys we've mentioned in Jay Groom that had a lot of hype around him, but we haven't seen Jay Groom yet, and he's had some bumps in the road in his development. Mm-hmm. So to see one of these guys make it here, and we'll see how he does. I'm optimistic. Is exciting, and like you said, with the long development path they typically tend to go with for pitchers, it's nice because you don't always expect the Red Sox to have a 23-year-old stud in the mix.
In the making, yeah.
So, but maybe next it'll be Jay Groom, it'll be Durbin Feltman, it'll be whoever, Brian Mata.
Somebody, yeah, I was just going to say Mata's, yep.
Right now it's Bayo, so I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm most excited I've been to watch a Red Sox game all year.
I said that to you earlier. I'm like, I can't remember the last time I've been this excited to sit down and watch a Sox game this year. I mean, I'm curious too, just going back and looking at the schedule. Obviously, we've talked about this leading up, that this is kind of the prove it stretch where you have these 14 games against the Rays and Yankees. You're coming off a series against the Cubs that we didn't obviously talk about a ton last week. I don't think we even talked about the Red Sox last week. A little bit. You lost 2 out of the 3 to the Chicago Cubs, who's a team. Like every time I saw an update come across of the Cubs scoring, I had no idea who the player was because it's a team of no names right now in Chicago. The fact that you lost 2 out of 3 to them is kind of pathetic. Like, let's not sugarcoat it here. So I wonder if calling Bayo up is maybe, we've seen it with teams in the past. You call up a young stud prospect to try to get a shot in the arm. They did it with Duran earlier in the season and it worked out.
He's playing great.
He is. There's going to be problems, which I'll get into this in a second, of when Kike finally comes back healthy, of what do you do when it comes to, opening up a roster spot for him. What's the matter?
This is a fucking blender, I think.
Oh, it's like I didn't know if there was some sort of
spoons. Like it sounds like they're blending metal.
Jesus Christ, that could just what the hell's going on?
What the fuck? Just run out there.
What are you doing? But yeah, I mean, just on Duran, I mean, he is just definitely earned himself a spot in the lineup. I think he's earned himself a leadoff spot from here on out. Like if Kike gets healthy and they put Hernandez back in the leadoff spot and Duran's hitting 9th, then you're shooting yourself in the foot at that point. Which leads me to the point of, like I said, you have these moves that I've liked, and kudos to them again for making them. Now take it a step further and make some other moves. And one would be, in my opinion, and I've seen some people say this on Twitter, is I think Jackie Bradley Jr.'s time should be done here. Again, with Hernandez coming back, I wouldn't take Rob Refsnyder off this team right now, as crazy as that is to say. I hated the fact that they had him on the opening day roster because, again, he's just, at least I thought, a AAA bum. And he's proven me wrong there. He's been excellent for this team. You just said it. Jaron Duran's been arguably one of their better hitters the last month. He's been an on-base machine. You can't take him out of the lineup. So Jackie Bradley Jr., exactly. His speed is just game-changing enough as is. I know people will say, well, the defense isn't great. Like, you can live with exactly. You can live with the work-in-progress defense 24. If the guy's going to be an on-base machine and is going to steal you potentially 30 bases, because that's the type of speed he has. You can live without Jackie Bradley Jr. being here at this point. The guy's hitting 211 right now. He had a 3-game hit streak from a stretch of June 15th and 17th. I went back and looked it up. He's 3 for his last 36. Hasn't hit a home run in a game he started. I have the stat here somewhere. I'm trying to mess around with screens. It's not coming up though. Give me 1 second. Since this is
25, by the way.
Yeah, I thought he was in his mid-20s. From Boston Sports Info on Twitter, Jackie Bradley Jr. has gone a full calendar year without hitting a home run in a game he has started. 94 games started, 334 at bats, 0 home runs. The last home run he hit was July 3rd of 2021. Since June 1st, I went back and looked this up. He's hitting 194 with no homers, 9 runs batted in, 14. He's 14 for 72, 15 Ks, 4 walks. Jackie Bradley Jr. is literally doing nothing in the lineup at this point. So like I said, once guys start getting back healthy, I think you really have to start considering potentially DFAing him. If you can maybe shop his name just to have it out there as a guy that, is defense first. Maybe you get a
defensive utility guy.
Exactly. Maybe you get a team that's stupid enough to give you something for him, but I doubt it.
That's a future considerations trade. 100%.
Exactly. Yep. A salary dump, future considerations.
Some random scrub in 4 years.
Exactly. And then take it a step further, go out and get a first baseman and say goodbye to Bobby Dahlbeck, because he's another one too that at this point, we talked about this before, and I said maybe again you get a team dumb enough to trade for him. You didn't think so, and I think you lean towards that at this point because
Kristen cautious.
Oh, I would say yes, but he's been dealing with an ankle injury. I think he hasn't played in a month, so that's he's right. At this point, the fact that Franchy Cordero, I think you're better off with being your starting first baseman. Which again, that's saying because Franchy Cordero's come back down to earth a little bit. You have a legitimate hole at first base again. Dahlbeck's been terrible, hasn't homered in 19 games, has just 2 RBIs in his last 18. I went back and looked at it, kind of took a weird number here, but his last 26 at bats, he struck out in half of them, 13. So he's not producing either. So you have 2 legitimate holes in the lineup when these 2 guys are in. Something has to be done. You finally pulled the trigger on getting rid of Robles. I think it's time to look at doing the same thing with Bradley and Dahlbeck. At least you could stash in AAA this year, try to get his timing back or get him, on track or something. But Bradley, at this point, has to go. He's giving you nothing. You can you can live without the defense, especially if Kike comes back. You stick him in right field, you stick Duran in right field, and you just run with that because it's time. I've had enough of Bradley.
It's time to weed out some more of this uncertainty. As you're trying to establish more of a hold on the second spot in the AL East.
Exactly. You're kind of treading water right now. Again, losing 2 out of 3 to the Cubs puts you in a really bad spot where now you have to kind of assert yourself in these 14 games against Tampa Bay and New York. And New York's come back to earth a little bit. They're starting to lose a little bit more. The Rays are still banged up. Big game tonight just for, Bayo's sake and then being able to take the series. So maybe that's a little added pressure on that you don't want to have on the kid in his first start in the majors, but who knows, maybe he'll live up to, it won't phase him all that much. But you're kind of in a spot here where if you start dropping some of these games left and right, then you really put yourself in a bad spot to not be able to come out of it post All-Star break. And then again, trade deadline comes, you're kind of in wait and see mode with this team right now. Kind of like you were last year where it's is this team going to be a buyer or a seller at the deadline? And, right now they're buyers because the rest of the AL is just so crappy that they're probably going to make the playoffs. I think I said this a couple weeks ago, just because every other team in the AL doesn't look like they really want to compete for anything. It's the Red Sox, the Rays, the Blue Jays, and who else? Cleveland, but you expose Cleveland for as bad as a team as they were a couple weeks ago. So it's not like they're a huge threat either. So it's in a weird spot right now for the Red Sox. You're obviously, like we said, excited for Bayo's start tonight, but then you're all right, you kind of have to show some other things as well.
Yep. Yeah, they got to figure a few things out and go from there. Another thing that will factor into them figuring things out or having to switch things up a little bit is Chris Sale returning to the Red Sox next week.
Yes, he'll be, according to Alex Cora, he was on MLB Network the other day, or MLB Network Radio, and he said, quote, if everything goes fine tomorrow, because Chris Sale is making a rehab appearance in Worcester tonight. I saw that tweet was kind of funny. They had 33-year-old Chris Sale will start for Worcester tonight, and 23-year-old Brian Bayo will start for the Red Sox. So go figure that. But yeah, he's going to have a rehab assignment tonight in Worcester. And again, like Cora said, if all goes according to plan, as you mentioned, he'll be back with Boston next week. I didn't catch it. I saw this on Twitter. Apparently Eck last night said he would, quote, put the ranch on sale returning in Tampa. So that would put him at some point around either a Monday through Thursday. They play the Rays in the Trop. I believe it's the 11th to the 14th. So somewhere around there. Now, wherever he pitches in that series will probably depend. He probably won't pitch, honestly, until Wednesday. The Red Sox will probably give him the full week off after this rehab assignment. So probably you're looking at Wednesday or Thursday. And again, that will kind of, again, you asked the question of weeding guys out, who's going to stay, who's going to go. You have to make a decision on whose spot is Sale going to replace. I think Danish is probably the odd man out if he's still here. But that'll obviously be a good help too. Sale's been pretty good in these rehab assignments with the Gulf Coast League. In Portland, he's made 3 starts, 235 ERA, 7 Ks, 1 walk. He's constantly hit 95, 96. So that's good with his fastball. Obviously the velocity had been down the last couple of seasons. So good to see Sale kind of pumping it back up there. Hopefully he can give you something. His last outing in Portland, pitched 4 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run. He didn't walk anybody and struck out 7 and 52 pitches. So that was good to see. Obviously he'll be a big help moving forward. And then, well, like you said, once you start getting guys like Eovaldi and Whitlock back, then you kind of have to figure out who's here to stay and who can go.
Absolutely. So,
and then you had one other note that I did not see earlier today, and then thankfully you had this in here because, like I said, I missed it.
Yeah, I've been hearing interesting things about this guy over the past few months, and it's Cedar Rafaela, who will be representing the Red Sox in the Futures game. And this kid, Cedar, is a really cool name, which is good for him. Wouldn't have guessed that's the pronunciation given the spelling. I would have guessed sedan or the car
Sedani or something. Yeah, Sedani.
Yeah, who knows?
Just call him Mini Mookie. If you've seen the highlights of him on Twitter or just anywhere. Yeah, he is. I mean, same stance, same follow through. He is Mini Mookie Betts in a nutshell.
It's that Miguel Blaze kid has the same exact swing as Mookie.
Yeah, same. Yep.
Yeah, Sadon seems like a pretty good prospect. Cool name, like we said. I just drew a blank on something I was going to say, but Tyler Milliken on Twitter said he's one of the breakout prospects across hashtag MILB baseball, slashing 314, 357, 589, 946 with 15 home runs, 22 doubles, 6 triples, and 17 stolen bases with special in all caps defense. So see what Sadon can do.
Yep.
Looks like they found a potential diamond in the rough. They might have found that with friggin' Bayo when they signed him as an international free agent in 2017
Absolutely.
too.
Yep.
And maybe Miguel Blaze will be next. They're getting some good turnout of these prospects lately. Blaze Jordan's had some murmurs around him too. So good to see the Red Sox prospects thriving, because maybe Sadon will be one of the next.
Yeah, I mean, everything is pointing in the right direction for him. Like I said, I mean, very similar. Again, I don't want to put all the hype on him and say he's the next Mookie Betts, but like I said, there's a lot of similarities, even from the Milliken stuff, just how quickly he's kind of broken out and been able to make an imprint in the minor leagues. And then again, smaller guy, can play multiple positions. I know I think primarily been an outfielder in the minors, but can play, like I said, infield as well. That's similar to Mookie Betts. Of course, came up as a second baseman and was transitioned to the outfield, so maybe the flip there. And then, like you said, 17 stolen bases, good speed, good power. A lot to like about him.
Yeah, the thing I drew a blank on was we have 2 Mookies now potentially, because we have Mookie Dew and Malcolm Brogdon.
That's right.
New Mookie and Sadon. So double Mookie, advantage Boston.
There you go.
Suck it, LA. So yeah, there's that. I think that wraps it up for episode 102 though.
I think so. There's nothing else. Yeah, I was just looking really quick. Nothing else. There was a report I saw that from Woj had we started with basketball to end with basketball, that the San Antonio Spurs, I thought could potentially be involved on a 3-team deal that might get Kyrie to LA, and there's salaries involved. And I think Russell Westbrook might end up, I can't find the tweet now, but Russell Westbrook could end up in San Antonio. There's some rumblings about that. So again, another day, another Kyrie rumor that will probably change within the hour, and he'll want to go somewhere or stick with Brooklyn or something stupid.
Yep. NHL schedules look like they're coming out.
Ooh.
I just saw the Coyotes one popped up. Bruins play the Coyotes on October 15th for anybody interested. Some other interesting quick NHL notes before we wrap up things coming out. Kyle Dubas on if he's concerned about a guy I mentioned. Rasmus Sandin might get offer sheeted. He said if there's going to be an offer sheet, the sooner the better, so we can make the decision and move on. So
there you go.
We shall see what happens there. I think somebody should absolutely offer sheet Rasmus Sandin. I think he's really good, and I think he's going to get even better. Bill Guerin, the Wild GM on the Kaprizov reports, says we're trying to find out as much as we can, but we're not too worried about it. We're not going to push the panic button. We're just trying to gather information and find out if this is even credible. So makes sense. We shall see, though. Another one sounds like the Blue Jackets and the Coyotes discussion on Jacob Chikrin, which were supposedly involving the 12th overall pick yesterday. I've cooled to the point where a source close to the situation now doesn't expect it will happen. That's the team since the start I have been not all in on, but very pointed towards as a team that could sneak in and get Chikrin. We were talking at the deadline about that and before then. But yeah, we'll say it's a draft, so these could change, as Brian Hedger mentioned in his tweet here. And let's see if the Bruins dropped their schedule. They did.
Did they? I didn't see anything on. Oh yeah, right there. I didn't scroll down on Twitter far enough.
They did. We're not going to run through it all though. But season opener is against Washington. In Washington, we saw that happen a few years ago.
I was just going to say, that was not good.
That game was a disaster. We got Washington, then Arizona, Florida, Ottawa, Anaheim, Minnesota, Dallas, Detroit, Columbus for October. Do they play on my birthday? No, they play the day before. Do they play on your birthday? They do at the Rangers. So you should make a trip to MSG and go watch that.
Oof, I've been to New York twice, and it's 2 times too many.
Yeah, 2 times.
Sorry for any New York fans that are listening, but
yeah,
it's just
the broadcast
it's a lot.
Crapped out according to Twitter, but on Restream it says we're still going. But
there we go.
It's towards the end of the episode anyway. So thank you so much for listening to episode 102. It's pretty remarkable that we kept an NHL draft episode under 2.5 hours. It's pretty fucking insane. I was expecting we might go like 3 hours somehow, and I might lose track of time. But I
Mm.
don't know. I think I kept the rambling somewhat to a minimum, so that's good. That's big for me. Sorry, I saw something about the Canadians I thought was going to be draft related, but yeah, thank you for listening. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're here every live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube every Wednesday, usually 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. But with me on vacation, Ryan off work today, we did a little early today. But yeah, you can find us wherever you find your podcasts. You can watch live, like I said. Ratings, you can give them on Apple, Spotify, all that jazz. YouTube comments, whatever. If you want to give us some feedback, go ahead. But yeah, you can find us anywhere. You can find me on Twitter at Mike_Cratty, Ryan at Ryan_Salvaggio, the show at Sal and Cratty Pod, TikTok, Salvaggio and Cratty, throw that in there. Check out the Full Press Coverage app and other Full Press content. Listen to us in the future. We appreciate it. The audience just keeps going up. We keep growing. So it's awesome to see that every week. Thank you so much for that. Stay safe, stay healthy, be nice to people, all that good stuff. And we'll talk to you next week on the day of NHL free agency. Until
Nice.
then, peace.